And that is my entire explanation and review of the first Kingdom Hearts game.
Uh-huh. And who's Sora?
Okay, that's all right. That's all right. So, from the beginning, I'm going to be playing and ranking every Kingdom Hearts, obviously starting with the first one. And that will require a deep dive through the heart that will in no way be simple nor clean. Hi, I'm Club, and welcome to Club's Hub.
I know I married you.
I've been having these weird thoughts lately. Like, is any of this for real? Or not?
No, like, seriously, where did you all come from?
I love Kingdom Hearts. I would definitely say it's one of the three pillars that holds up my love for gaming. We don't talk about the fourth one.
And that love for this franchise has shaped my ever-growing love for action RPGs, Disney, Final Fantasy, and the crazy complicated stories that Tetsuya Nomura, the director of Kingdom Hearts, likes to tell.
And I'm not joking when I say that. I'm completely engrossed in anything that comes from the Kingdom Hearts series, so much so that I've become my own personal encyclopedia to the franchise. It's honestly kind of surprising it took me so long to make a video on Kingdom Hearts with how important the series is to me. Now, there were several directions I could have gone with this video, but after the last one about every Guitar Hero, you all made it abundantly clear how I should handle my videos going forward. So, here I am, in the flesh, no PNG Club. For now.
But when I finally made the decision to make a video on the Kingdom Hearts series, I didn't think that a video where I would talk about every single one would do the games justice. With something like Guitar Hero, it's pretty easy to squish everything down into one video since the gameplay and trimmings around the games are pretty similar. Could you imagine if I talked as in-depth about every Kingdom Hearts game as the length of this video suggests?
Now in Kingdom Hearts 3, Sora loses all of his abilities because what happened to my voice? What happened to my beard? My hair? Never mind.
No, I can't let that happen. I've got to give Kingdom Hearts the love and attention that the franchise deserves. Thus, in this video, I'll only be talking about the first Kingdom Hearts.
And even more thus, the reason why this video is called Playing and Ranking Every Kingdom Hearts, not Played and Ranked. In present tense, past tense. I went to college. I got a piece of paper that says I can function in society. I'm very smart at titling videos.
Now let's talk about how I did this. Kingdom Hearts originally released on the PS2, so I would need to get decent enough footage so that you all didn't have to look at a blur the entire video.
So I picked up the RetroTink 4K, an amazing device that allows me to play on original hardware and produce the best image possible for everyone's viewing pleasure.
Now I've managed to get the footage to go from this to this, which is a huge upgrade in my opinion. I'm a bit of a purist when it comes to playing and giving thoughts on games. I want to experience the game as intended on the hardware it was intended to be played on, if possible. So I'll be playing Kingdom Hearts on the PS2, which is already such a nostalgic trip for me as is.
But if you're a Kingdom Hearts nut like me, you'll know that they made an HD version of the game, and while that is true, it isn't technically an HD version of the original game. No. It's an HD version of Kingdom Hearts Final Mix, which was originally launched on the PS2 as a Japanese exclusive. It's a version with a ton of new features and quality of life improvements and so on and so forth. So I'm going to be playing this version, right? No, I don't have a PS2 from Japan, so why do I own this? Well, to hold it up for this bit, but that's not important. Since I can't play it that way, I'll be playing the HD version of Kingdom Hearts Final Mix, which was released in the US for the PS3, but then it got its re-release on the PS4 that I'm going to be playing on the PS5. And I hope that was all clear to you because that explanation is about how complicated the Kingdom Hearts story gets after the second game.
To put it simply, I played both the original release of the game and the Final Mix version of the game. So throughout the video, you'll see an intersplicing of footage from both games. Here at the beginning, I'm going to go through everything the base game had to offer, but I'll be sure to go in depth about the many differences that Final Mix brought to the original game when it becomes relevant.
And with that, come with me as we discover the start of a beautiful relationship between two companies. Two companies that brought us the magic that is the Kingdom Hearts franchise. I feel like a lot of people know how this game came to be, but let's break it down for everyone that doesn't know.
Believe it or not, this game started with Super Mario 64 of all things, which was released for the Nintendo 64 on June 23rd, 1996. Former game producers at Square Enix, formerly known as Squaresoft, Shinji Hashimoto, and Hironobu Sakaguchi, expressed desire in making a game like Mario 64, but lamented the fact that they couldn't make anything as popular as that unless it was made with Disney characters. A passing by, Tetsuya Nomura loved the idea and asked to be the lead in such a project, which the two producers happily agreed to.
And this is the moment that everyone talks about. You see, at the time of conception, both Squaresoft and Disney shared office building space in Japan. And because of that, Hashimoto managed to have an accidental meeting with a Disney executive in an elevator ride. I know, right? Kingdom Hearts was literally an elevator pitch.
From there, they hit the ground running on development in February of 2000. At the beginning, gameplay had a more centralized focus over story, trying to lean more heavily into the Disney aged range audience. But with a fear of the game not being successful without also appealing to the Final Fantasy audience, they decided to develop the story even further to give the game a nice balance between both story and gameplay. When selecting Disney worlds and IP to use in the game, the team was given assistance from the current CEO of Disney, Bob Iger. Iger helped in allowing them to use many of the different IPs without many restrictions. However, the team still wanted to make sure that any of the characters they used would still work within the boundaries of their original story. To further the use of the Disney IPs, Nomura wanted to use one of the theme parks when it came to naming the game, specifically Animal Kingdom, since it had recently opened at the time. This in turn was going to lead to the game being called Kingdom. However, they had a difficult time securing that title for legal reasons and later added Hearts to it once the story was a bit more fleshed out.
As production was in full swing, they were going to need someone for the music. That's where the legendary Yoko Shimomura comes in. As a kid, I wasn't fully aware of her work, but the older I got, the more self-aware I became of the type of music she made. She is a master at what she does, whether that's tugging on your heartstrings or giving you butterflies in your stomach. I can almost immediately pick out her music in any game I play now.
While there are definitely arranged versions of Disney songs throughout the game, Shimomura was sure to create a ton of whimsically Disney and Final Fantasy inspired tracks that are now classified as Kingdom Hearts to their core.
I even have this Kingdom Hearts soundtrack that I've had since I was a kid, and I remember listening to this music all the time growing up. Thanks, Shimomura. Now my entire Spotify playlists are nothing but video game music and instrumentals that make me want to cry.
But what's even more impressive is the sheer amount of talented voice actors they were able to get for the game, with most of the original cast for the Disney characters being brought back to reprise their roles. People like Bill Farmer as Goofy, Jim Cummings as Pooh and Tigger, Scott Weiner as Aladdin, Pat Carroll as Ursula, and so many others. They even got Catherine Beaumont for Alice and Wendy, who was the original voice actress for them in the 50s. As for our main cast, they got some pretty big names as well. David Gallagher as Riku, Hayden Panettiere as Kairi, and most notably Haley Joel Osment as our main man Sora. You know, the kid from Six Sense? Kingdom Hearts was formally announced to the public at E3 2001, and even further updates were given at the Tokyo Game Show 2001, with a brand new trailer and a hands-on demo for people to try out the game themselves.
On March 28th, 2002, Kingdom Hearts was released in Japan on the PlayStation 2. It later got its American release on September 17th, 2002, with Europe receiving it on November 15th and Australia on the 22nd. I was 6 when this game came out, so it was completely off of my radar. It wasn't until I saw Kingdom Hearts 2 on the Disney Channel show Disney 411 that I had even heard about Kingdom Hearts. I did eventually play Kingdom Hearts 1 after I played Kingdom Hearts 2, so to say I was confused is a bit of an understatement. But we'll talk about that when we talk about Kingdom Hearts 2. And now that Kingdom Hearts is finally released to the public, let's see what Squaresoft and Disney were able to cook up.
Kingdom Hearts is a 3D action RPG, and with this being originally inspired by Super Mario 64, you'll find that they lean heavily into that with a ton of platforming. Around this era of gaming, we were starting to get more and more 3D games, and it was always pretty hit or miss on whether they were going to get the feel of it right. For this game, I'd say the entire movement system as a whole is hit or miss. Listen, I love this game to death, but
I'm trying my absolute hardest to make sure that these glasses don't affect my genuine thoughts about this game. You've been warned. This is a review. I'm gonna be nitpicky.
They love to have you platform in this game. It's practically everywhere. I've grown very accustomed to it over the years, which makes it hard for me to have a vanilla impression on it, but from what I experienced in my playthrough for this video, it can be pretty clunky. So many times I thought I was going to be able to make the jump, and I'll either overshoot it or undershoot it by a hair, and Sora just refuses to grab the ledge to hoist himself up. It doesn't help that oh no, I forgot! This game is so old that they don't even have the camera controls mapped to the right analog stick!
Back in the heyday of the PlayStation 2, it was pretty standard for some games to default using the L2 and R2 to control the X-axis of the camera, with no option to control the Y-axis, and unfortunately, That's the case with the original release of Kingdom Hearts.
I actually got pretty acquainted with this form of controlling the camera as I got deeper into the game, but unfortunately, the camera is probably one of the worst parts about Kingdom Hearts.
The camera has a real knack at getting caught in the the camera has a real knack at getting caught in the worst possible angles and just staying there for way too long.
With the camera being so close to Sora and your only option to fix it is by adjusting it manually with the trigger buttons, there were several moments throughout my playthrough where I felt like I was battling the camera more than the actual enemies I was fighting. But how does fighting those enemies work? Well, since this is an action RPG, everything is happening in real time, so you have to react, dodge, and attack as things are coming your way.
This has always been my preferred way of playing games, and I think Kingdom Hearts made that abundantly clear for past me. Always liked the quick-paced reactionary gameplay style of action RPGs over the
slow, methodical, strategic-like gameplay of turn-based RPGs.
It's your move.
But with the RPG side of things comes a ton of player customization when it comes to your equipment and weapons. Sora's weapon, and one of the main icons of the Kingdom Hearts series, is the Keyblade. Now, I know what you're thinking.
But this is the coolest looking weapon ever, right?
No, in fact, I was thinking the exact opposite.
Oh.
In fact, as a kid, I initially thought that the idea of a giant key as a weapon was ridiculous. And while on the surface layer, the base Keyblade, by design, is very neutral and plain looking at first glance, the ideas and creativity that comes with the Keyblade makes it one of my favorite weapons, if not one of the best weapons in gaming of all time.
So, does that mean I can keep it?
I never said you shouldn't.
Hooray!
With it being an RPG and all, they needed to come up with a way for you to upgrade your weapon throughout the game. And because of that, they came up with the ingenious idea of your Keyblade having the ability to change its appearance and thus its stats. As you play, you'll be given different keychains that you can equip to your Keyblade. Doing so will have your blade take on the appearance of the Disney or Final Fantasy property it's associated with, as well as change its stats and length of the blade. This idea has led us to having several of the coolest looking blades in all of gaming in my opinion, and lends itself well to having a range of either the simplest design in the world to the quote-unquote edgiest looking design, and I'm all on board for it. There's really only one problem that comes with equipping different Keyblades, and that presents itself later in the game. Most of the different keychains you get are given to you one at a time as you complete different worlds, but towards the end they start handing them out like candy, making some of the cooler looking Keyblades, or ones you thought you'd have longer, completely obsolete in a matter of a few minutes. It's not a super bad issue, just a little odd that they'd even bother giving it to you in the first place if the literal next one you were going to get within a matter of minutes is going to be so much better in so many different ways. But different Keyblades aren't the only thing you can equip. You can also equip yourself with different accessories as well to help boost your stats. As you progress, your decisions when it comes to equipping yourself will become harder and harder, as the accessories you'll be getting aren't simply making the numbers go higher and higher, but are becoming a balancing act of which stats you want to put more numbers into. Some will even actively lower other stats, but in return will greatly increase another stat, and I love playing around with these to make the best build for my playstyle. I can't help but think about Final Fantasy XVI and how disappointing that equipment system was. The entire game you would get stuff with higher numbers. There was never a give and take system that allowed for experimentation, and I feel obligated to applaud Kingdom Hearts for having such a wide range of combinations for a system that, in all honesty, is pretty easy to manage. It's literally one menu called equipment, and every item in the game that can be equipped to that menu will have the accessory symbol. So every time I was rewarded with one, I was able to easily tell that that was in fact an accessory. I would then immediately head over to the equipment menu and start moving everything around. It's very quick, painless, and easy to customize.
I'll tell you what isn't quick and easy to customize, however, is the items. I don't see people talking about this much, but it really bothers me how they handle the exchanging of items in this game.
Items, first of all, are what you use to heal yourself, so you're using them pretty frequently and constantly having to add them back when you use them, which is fine, except they made it the most confusing system they could possibly make it. When you equip an accessory, it's pretty straightforward. Pick a slot, it takes you to a list of every accessory you have, select it, and you're good to go. But not items. No. We have to make that as complicated as possible. First, you select a slot, then a menu, regardless of whether the slot was empty or not, comes up, asking whether you want to use, exchange, take out, or discard. Clicking take out or exchange will get you the item, but once you click it, you have to go all the way over to your stock and then select the item you want to go into your slot. Simply selecting takeout will immediately take you to your stock, but either way, why am I having to do all this menuing just to simply put a single potion in my inventory? Why can't I select multiple at once? Why do I have to do it one at a time? Could you imagine if this is how it worked in the real world?
Welcome to La Inconvenience. How may I help you?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm not too sure what I want. Could I get a menu?
Why, of course.
Thanks. Oh, well, that's odd. Could I get a menu with all of the options?
I'm sorry, sir. We don't serve an all here.
Okay, I guess poultry then.
Ah, yes, of course.
Actually, could I get a pasta menu?
The what, sir?
The pasta menu, one of the other menus.
I'm sorry, sir. I don't know what you speak of. We have a menu, if that is what you like.
Yeah, there it is, the pasta menu.
Ah, yes, the pasta menu. Why, of course.
You son of a...
But that isn't the only menuing you'll be doing. In fact, the whole gameplay is menuing. Your main way of interacting with the world revolves heavily around the command menu, a menu in the bottom left corner of the screen, a staple in the Kingdom Hearts series. The command menu has 4 slots with varying things you can do to use it. You'll cycle through it with either the D-pad or the right analog stick while playing. So having the command menu memorized and knowing what the 4 slots are and do are crucial to mastering this game. The most commonly used command is the attack option, which takes up the topmost slot of the menu. Selecting this with X will, surprise surprise, cause you to attack with your keyblade. So you'll be pressing X a lot on this option, which to some people is a problem. Common complaint with the Kingdom Hearts series is that it's a button mashing game, that you can just get through the game by mashing the attack button repeatedly.
Yeah, if you're a loser.
I won't deny for a second that you could get through this game by just pressing attack over and over again, but I really think you're doing yourself a disservice by brute forcing your way through these games. While I could make the argument that this first game is the worst offender of being easily button mashed through, some of the fights can be easily countered with a good strategy and a keen eye for projected attacks. But along with that strategy, you could also make good use of the second option on your command menu, magic.
I love magic! Zippity paw, zippity toe, hit him with a presto, and look! It's my manifesto!
Not that kind of magic. No, it's your standard Final Fantasy-esque magic. So we've got fire, blizzard, thunder, cure, stop, gravity, and the best of them all, arrow. Magic is a pretty great alternative to smacking people with the blunt end of your Keyblade in the Kingdom Hearts games, but I find most of them to be pretty ineffective in the first Kingdom Hearts game. Sure, there are some magic abilities that work great against enemies with a significant weakness against it, but for the most part, I didn't use magic a whole lot. To give it the most fairest of shots though, the best way to make your magic effective is to equip yourself properly. There are a ton of different accessories and Keyblades that will give you the stat boost you need to make your magic more powerful, but for some reason those stats are invisible and never really shown to you. You just get an arbitrary, this will make your magic more powerful description with no real indication to what that means. On top of that, the way magic is managed is a bit odd to me. On your status bar in the bottom right hand corner, you have your health indicated by the green bar and then your MP or magic points indicated by the blue bar. The blue bar is segmented into several different parts and depending on how much it costs to use the magic you want to use, it will take that many blue bars away from you. There are 2 ways to get your magic back, either by filling up the orange bar to the position of where your next blue bar would be, or by using items to refill your magic. In all honesty, this system isn't terrible, but the managing of my one resource to do damage stressed me out, and I opted to lean super hard into a strength-based build, which is pretty typical for the RPGs I play.
What can I say? You look up bodybuilder in the dictionary and there's a picture of me.
That isn't to say I didn't use magic throughout the game. I used arrow a lot, which is a spell that reduces the amount of damage you take. Anytime I was going into a fight I knew I'd be taking a lot of damage in, I was sure to have arrow at the ready. I also use cure a ton as well, since it's a quick and reliable way to heal yourself in a pinch, and those quick decisions can be made even quicker with the use of the shortcut menu. Holding down L1 and pressing either X, square, or triangle will allow you to use magic without having to scroll through a list of your available spells. This shortcut menu is completely customizable, and I would usually have cure, arrow, and some random offensive magic equipped. For some reason they don't let you attach anything to circle, but that may have something to do with the fact that circle is used for jumping and they didn't want to remove that mobility from you while you're trying to quickly use magic. They also won't let you attach any items to your shortcut menu, which is a pretty missed opportunity in my opinion. It would have been very helpful to use an item in a pinch instead of having to scroll all the way to my third option on the command menu, items. Pretty cut and dry there, nothing really much to add, it's just a list of all your available items you have equipped for battle.
But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Going back to the magic, there's actually quite a bit more depth to it rather than just getting a spell and that being the end of it. In similar Final Fantasy fashion, you can get upgraded magic spells, which makes sense. Why wouldn't you get upgraded magic spells? but it's how you get them.
You retrieve a lot of things in this game in very unique ways, and the same goes with magic and their upgrades. You could get them from a boss battle, an optional boss battle, talking to an NPC. Heck, you can even find them in treasure chests, which is honestly super cool. That means that you could potentially miss out on spells and their more powerful iterations. It's an intelligent means of getting the player to be more explorative and then reward them in turn. But we'll talk more about that when we discuss level design.
But there's even more powerful magic you can miss out on with the summons. That's right, similar to the summons in Final Fantasy, there are of course summons in Kingdom Hearts, inspired by multiple different Disney characters, which is such a wonderful idea to fill the game to the brim with as many characters as possible.
You can summon the likes of Simba, Bambi, Genie, Dumbo, Tinkerbell, and Mushu, all of which have varying ways of attacking for you or assisting you.
However, if I'm going to be perfectly honest, I rarely use these guys. I love the idea, don't get me wrong, but it just always seemed like a waste of time to me.
What I mean by that is that they have these super long, exaggerated cutscenes just for them to barely make an appearance and do almost no damage.
Oh no, a Heartless! Better summon my friends to help. Give me strength!
Sometimes it felt like the summons were doing a lot, but I think that was more show rather than them actually doing anything. This ties back into that whole invisible magic stat, so I just didn't bother. With the exception of Tinkerbell, who is actually incredibly helpful. She'll stay with you the entire duration of a fight and constantly heal you, and if you happen to kick the bucket mid-fight, she'll heal you all the way to full health and then leave. It's a great countermeasure for those harder fights, but not really something that I ever found myself needing other than to get footage of it.
And that should be everything about magic, but what about the fourth slot of the command menu? Well, you see, that slot is shrouded in a mystery that no one has ever been able to—
Oh, it's to examine things. How lame. Alright, that's not all it does, but that is one of the many things it can do. The fourth slot is used as a multi-tool for things I want you to interact with. Open a door, open a chest, examine an object, but not talking to people for some reason, which is tied to your attack button. But the last and most important thing that the fourth command menu slot can do is activate your special abilities.
How I haven't talked about abilities up to this point is beyond me, but your use, organization, and choices in the multiple different abilities you get is crucial to perfecting the combat in this game.
As you level up or defeat bosses, Sora will obtain a wide range of new attack, defense, and support abilities that you'll get to choose between to have equipped. There are way too many for me to break them all down individually, but to name a few, we've got Scan, which allows you to view the health of the enemies you're fighting, Dodge, Roll, and Guard, which are fantastic defensive abilities that allow you to play safely and at your own pace, Second Chance, which keeps you at 1 HP after taking a massive hit, Counter Attack, which allows you to strike back after an enemy's attack that you successfully blocked, and so many more. There are so many great ones that can help out immensely, but early game, you're pretty limited to how many you can equip at a time since it takes ability points to equip them, something you like a great number of at the beginning. And that decision making isn't made any easier with the inclusion of the special abilities I mentioned earlier. Sonic Blade, Strike Raid, Aris Arcaeum, and Ragnarok are the special abilities mentioned and are extremely powerful. Throughout the game, you'll unlock these and can equip them with the rest of your abilities. However, they take up a substantial amount of ability points, so I like to be choosy when deciding which one to use. I tend to lean more heavily towards Sonic Blade. To use said abilities, there will be a prompt on the aforementioned fourth slot of your command menu, where you'll select it and go into the attack animation, consuming MP in the process, so you'll need to manage your magic points for these abilities as well. The attacks aren't a simple press of the button and it just works, however. You'll need to time your button presses in a sort of quick time event sort of thing on your command menu to maximize the output of the attack. This timing can be a bit jank sometimes and requires you to really get the timing down. If you flub it up, you could end the attack prematurely, wasting your MP in the process.
It took me a while to get most of these down, and I would sometimes think to myself whether using them was worth it or not, since I would just mess it up all the time and waste all of my MP. But I think in the end, it was definitely worth mastering the timing, as you'll see when we talk about the battles. And with that, I think that just about covers all the basics of combat, movement, and core gameplay. So with a picturesque visual in your head of how the game works and functions, let's dive headfirst into the world of Kingdom Hearts. Okay, so I wanted you all to know that I was fully committed to doing a small cover of Simple and Clean here. I wanted to so bad. I think I have a pretty decent-ish singing voice. Well, I thought I could do it. But then I looked into the legality of doing a cover of such a popular song, and according to YouTube, term of legal copyright usage, fair use usage, royalties usage, etc., page 482, section 8, paragraph 4, subsection A, no.
Oh well, maybe someday. But it's worth noting how much of a banger Simple and Clean by Hikaru Utada is. She's been pretty much made synonymous with Kingdom Hearts, being featured at the intro of almost every Kingdom Hearts game.
I'm not kidding when I say this song is a bop. If you haven't heard it yet, I beg of you to give it a listen. It's practically the theme song for the Kingdom Hearts series at this point, and it's definitely worth a listen. Heck, my wife, who's never played Kingdom Hearts, loves this song. We listen to it all the time. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself.
Before you start the game, you're presented with another iconic tune to the Kingdom Hearts series, Dearly Beloved, a song that greets you on the main menu of every Kingdom Hearts game. I love this song, it's so beautiful. In fact, I love it so much, I had it played during my wedding and...
Sorry, I like the music in this game if you couldn't tell. Anyways, after prying yourself from the enchanting main menu, it's time to select your difficulty.
In the base game, you only have two options, normal and expert, with the only difference of the two being that expert makes all the enemies do double damage and making the requirement for some extra goodies at the end of the game slightly easier to achieve. I of course chose expert, but I had had past experience with this game, so I wasn't concerned about it in the slightest, but I could see a casual player struggle with expert if they went into this game blind.
This game is impossible.
Once we actually start the game, we begin our journey in the Dive to the Heart, a sort of inner looking into Sora's heart. But it's also just a glorified way for the game to go over all the basics we talked about earlier. I always loved this section of the game. It's a great introduction to not only coming to the realization that you're going to be surrounded by Disney characters this entire game, but it also introduces you to how leveling up in this game works. At the very beginning, you're presented with a sword, a shield, and a staff, and asked to select a power to receive and a power to give up. Now, I know that's a pretty tall order to ask a kid playing this game to do. What if I need the shield to protect myself, but I can't give up the sword because that's my main way of attacking? But magic can also be pretty powerful, and not to worry. What the game is actually asking you is what starting stats do you want and what order do you want to get your abilities in when you level up.
Something that it doesn't actually tell you straight out. But thankfully, I've got my old Kingdom Hearts strategy guide. It's seen better days. It's pretty unanimously decided by the community that the best option is to start with the shield and sacrifice a sword. This not only gives you the highest amount of stats, but also the most balanced stats. So I went with that. But choosing any other option isn't going to negatively affect your type of playstyle either.
What will affect your playstyle negatively is the questions these kids ask you. At first, the questions seem pretty ambiguous and don't matter a whole lot. What are you afraid of? What's most important to you? What do you want out of life?
Damn. Okay, I know the series can be emotional, but I didn't know we were getting so existential right out of the gate.
These questions and how you answer them are pretty important. Based on how you answer them will determine how fast you level up. There's a slow, medium, and fast option. With fast, you'll level up super fast at the beginning, but struggle in late game. Medium is where you level up at a pretty standard pace, and slow means it'll be hard for you to level up at the beginning and super easy late game. The general consensus is to pick anything other than slow, as picking slow will give you a super bad impression of the game as you struggle with a lot of the early game bosses. It's manageable, just a pain, and thankfully the game does tell you which path you're on before you confirm, albeit in a very Kingdom Hearts wording and fashion. The tutorial ends with a fight against your first boss and a reoccurring boss at that, Darkside. Darkside is a good intro to a couple of things. Firstly, the type of enemies you'll be fighting in this game. The main threats plaguing Kingdom Hearts are called Heartless. I know, clever name. But it works.
Listen, I've gotten used to the name at this point. I can admit it sounds a bit dumb or cliche, but I would be lying if I didn't say I liked it.
Secondly, the fight introduces you to another form of getting experience points called tech points. Exclusive to the first Kingdom Hearts, there are certain opportunities throughout fights where if you block an attack, hit a weakness, or parry something back, or something to that effect, you'll receive a few extra experience points labeled as tech as your reward. It's not much, but it's a nice little bonus for playing the game with positioning and strategy in mind, and it's a bit unfortunate they don't do it anymore in future games. Outside of that, there's not a whole lot to dissect here with the fight other than him being a reoccurring enemy, but Darkside makes for a pretty good tutorial boss. Not too hard to die to and not too easy, so you can flex your action RPG skills just a touch. However, it does also introduce you to a Kingdom Hearts staple, that good old-fashioned slow-mo effect that happens when you finish a battle. I love that effect. Wouldn't be Kingdom Hearts without it.
But the tutorial's not over yet. It's time to expand your horizons and broaden your playground. Welcome to Destiny Islands.
The Kingdom Hearts series is broken up by having you do a bunch of different worlds, and I found it best if I broke this video up the same way.
You may have noticed I haven't touched on any of the story yet. While I could talk about every story bit in between every world, I hated trying to touch on that while also trying to talk about the design of all these worlds, especially with how special the Kingdom Hearts story is to me. So let's separate that for now and talk about it at a later point in the video.
Destiny Islands is your first true world for exploration and a sort of playground for Sora and his friends. They are kids after all, and as kids are to do, they arm themselves with weapons and beat the crap out of each other.
Oh, what's that, honey? Oh, my kids are fighting. No, honey. That's just kids being kids. Let them play.
This is actually a great way to train up your combat skills and experience points early, by fighting all the kids on the island. Each of them have a different approach to fighting you, and it's a very clever and harmless way at teaching the player how to space themselves, look for openings, and time their attacks appropriately. Or getting thrashed over and over again if you're going against Sora's best friend Riku. Seriously, what is this kid eating to knock me out after a couple of hits? There is no reason to win against Riku, but I tried for maybe a little too long before I finally beat him. 1 to 8 is not something to be proud of, Sora! You can even challenge Riku to a race as well to help out with the platforming in this game, or actually to help you realize how jank the platforming is in this game. How is Riku perfect at literally everything he does? It's gotta be that glorious hair.
Well, I'm not jealous. If you guys didn't know, the way I do these videos is I take notes while I play the games. I took 32 pages of notes for this game, and I wanted to read you something I wrote on page 4. Riku can suck my butt. Well, I'm not kidding. I wrote that down.
Anyways, that's all just fluff to what you actually need to do, and that's gather materials for a raft. Your other friend Kairi has a list of stuff to help you, her, and Riku set sail to other worlds, and has you running errands to find everything. I feel like this task serves a few purposes. It's a good way of getting you to think how the game thinks when it tasks you to find something, or I guess better said as, it's a good way of getting the player to be a bit more explorative. Heck, they reward the explorative nature by rewarding you with chests and potions if you do a good enough job. But I also think it's a fantastic way of getting you to become enveloped with the characters in the island as a whole. This place is your home, so it hits a little harder when your world becomes shrouded in darkness and begins to fade away. Sora notices something is going on and seeks out his friends, both of which disappear before his eyes. Amidst all of this, Sora gains control of the Keyblade and is thrown off of the island and into battle with the return of Darkseid. This fight is really no different from the first, just a means of showing you the player how much better you've gotten since you were beating up all those kids on the island. I feel like it personally would have been better to use a different boss here, but I also think that the same boss was chosen for story reasons. Either way, he's kind of a pushover and can be defeated with hardly any struggle. With the second Darkseid defeated and Destiny Island swallowed by darkness, Sora gets thrown out of his world and sent to the humble abode of... Traverse Town is one of my favorite original worlds in the Kingdom Hearts series. It serves as a good place to not only get the feel of what a normal-sized Kingdom Hearts world should be like, but also a good place to experiment, explore, chat with NPCs, shop, and so much more.
This is a nice time to mention that a huge difference in this first Kingdom Hearts game as opposed to the others is how interactable all the worlds are.
What I mean by that is there is something hidden in almost every nook and cranny. Literally. For example, in Traverse Town, you may accidentally come across a postcard and not know what to do with it. Talking to NPCs or just putting 2 and 2 together, you'll come to find out that you can mail those postcards at this mailbox in the first district and in return get an item. There are 10 in total to be found all over Traverse Town, and some are in some pretty weird spots that a normal player probably wouldn't think of unless they did some experimenting.
All of this game is like that, and I love it. It's a bit of a shame that future titles don't really do this, because it just adds a little bit of extra depth to each of the worlds and rewards you for interacting with them. I know Kingdom Hearts is for sure a combat story-focused game first, but it'd be nice to see them bring something like this back in the future.
I'll point out a few other cool interactables as we touch upon each of the worlds, but you may have noticed a lot of appearances of Donald and Goofy in the footage I've been using. Well, as Destiny Islands was succumbing to darkness, Donald and Goofy were dealing with their own problems. You see, their king, King Mickey, had left the castle, noticing that several worlds were being destroyed and wanting to seek out answers to see if he could help in any way. In his absence, he asked Donald and Goofy to help with this problem by going to other worlds and finding someone with a key. That's how they also end up in Traverse Town, looking in every entryway, room, and building for someone... Someone with a key.
Wait a minute. Mickey asked Donald and Goofy to go look for somebody with a key. Keyblade! Sora! Well, they're looking for Sora! Well, I gotta go help them! He's not in the library. Shh. He's not at Target. Yeah, could I get a number 3 large with a Diet Coke? That'd be it. It's not a McDonald's. He's not at the park. He's not my burger. Where is he?
Where is he? He's gotta be around here, right? Where could he be? Could he have vanished? Did the Heartless get him? What's going to happen to the rest of the game? Is this where his story ends? Where is Sora?
I can't find him anywhere. Which means I'm not looking hard enough. I gotta go deeper. Sora, by definition, is a Disney character, and legally a Disney character. And I can only think of one place where Disney characters go. I was really hoping I didn't have to do this for a video, but Sora's left me no choice. So I went to Disney World, happiest place on earth, and probably honestly the most likely place we're gonna find Sora. So what are we waiting for? Come on, let's go find him. He's not at Space Mountain. He's not at the People Mover. He's not in this ice cream. He's not at the Haunted Mansion. He's not at Pirates of the Caribbean. He's not at It's a Small World. He's not at the Peter Pan ride. He's not at Big Thunder Mountain. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, look. Look, wait, where is he? Right there, look. It's Goofy. Goofy, I'm looking for Sora. I'll find him. Goofy has a son? So I'm starting to think that he's not at Magic Kingdom. Maybe at one of the other parks, like Epcot? He's not at Spaceship Earth. Hey man, do you know where Sora is? Man, a few words. He's not at Test Track. He's not at Mission Space. You should probably give all the cast members a raise. Okay, so I've been walking all over Epcot all day and I can't find Sora anywhere. I've been to all the different pavilions, I've been to a ton of different rides, and I just can't seem to... Oh, there he is. Right there, it literally has his name in it, Sora. I mean, he has to be here. Come on, let's go. Okay, so that wasn't Sora, but that was the best ride simulation I think I've ever been on. You know, I'm starting to think that he's not at Epcot, he's not at Hollywood Studios, and he's not at Animal Kingdom. I've looked everywhere and I just can't find him. I guess there's nothing else for me to do here. I'm going home. Man, after that entire trip, after looking in every single location, I just can't find Sora. He has to be around here somewhere, but I don't know where he is. It seems that at every single turn, no matter where I go, I just can't find Sora. This is getting ridiculous. I feel like there's just some sort of obvious clue, just something that I'm missing that I didn't see. So.
Oh, I feel so incredibly dumb. I mean, he was in the game the whole time. While that may not actually be Sora, that is in fact Squall from Final Fantasy VIII, or as he's known in this game, Leon. And he's not the only one from Final Fantasy. Those kids at Destiny Islands, they were Selphie, Tidus, and Waka from Final Fantasy VIII and X respectively. They've even got some from Final Fantasy VII, including Sid, Aerith, Yuffie, and Holy edgelord, Cloud looks awesome! Just Nomura flexing his character designing skills and just casually making Cloud the coolest looking character in this game. I love the inclusion and marrying of Final Fantasy and Disney characters. If it wasn't for this mashup, I don't know if I ever would have sought out a Final Fantasy game, let alone know who any of these characters are. But their inclusion is super smart. It not only works as an advertisement for the games they came from, but it also just works so seamlessly with the world building and set dressing of Kingdom Hearts, blending smoothly with all the original characters in the game like Sora, without having to overfill the game with a ton of new ones. And I would say that goes double for the inclusion of Donald and Goofy and the other Disney characters. I know that a lot of people will see Disney on anything nowadays and write it off immediately as a kid's game or something, but Kingdom Hearts does such a phenomenal job at performing a balancing act between seriousness and goofiness.
No pun intended, Goofy, but I mean it. Kingdom Hearts knows how to handle the Disney characters in a way that makes you almost forget that you're playing a game with Disney characters in it. And that'll be a bit more poignant in the story section of the video, but we got a little distracted from our search for Sora, so let's get back to where we were in Traverse Town.
It's at this point in the game where you're looking around at the same time Donald and Goofy are that we come across one of my biggest complaints with the level design for some of these areas. I was complimenting the game earlier for its wonderful ideas towards exploration, but sometimes it forces you to explore without you knowing what you're looking for. What I mean by that is that sometimes in order for you to progress the story, the game wants you to walk out of a very specific doorway to trigger a cutscene. Now that's fine and all if they'd actually tell you where to go or if the game nudged you in that direction, but it doesn't do that. I'm not asking for the game to hand me the answer on the silver platter, but I don't think it's a very good design choice to offer no solution of any kind and just hope that I randomly choose the correct path to advance the storyline. If you do wander around for long enough, you will eventually find where the game wanted you to go, but I find this sort of level design to be very infuriating, and honestly one of this game's worst traits.
It only does it a couple times in Traverse Town, and thankfully I was aware of this and went where I knew it wanted me, but trust me, this isn't the last time you're going to be hearing me talk about this.
After all that running around, you finally meet face to face with Donald and Goofy as they join your party to assist in taking down the big bad boss of Traverse Town, before promptly getting two-tapped and sitting on the bench for the whole fight.
Unfortunately, this is going to be a pretty prominent thing early game. Since I'm playing on Expert and receiving double damage, that also means that Donald and Goofy are too, which then means that... they're going to spend a lot of time dead. But that's not to say that they're completely useless, it's just going to take them a few levels and abilities before they can start pulling their own weight.
This goes doubly with the fact that you also need to equip them with better accessories and equipment as well. And while I knew to give them accessories, it never really crossed my mind to give them new weapons because I thought I would get them as the game progressed. I had no idea I could buy them new ones in Traverse Town until too late. Whoops. You could also give them items to use throughout the game, but I never bothered. You so much as get a paper cut and Goofy's going to throw 5 potions, 2 ethers, an elixir, and House MD at you, wasting all of your resources. So I just found it best to leave the item usage to myself. If you're wanting to try giving them items, however, you can actually customize their AI, and I found the system to work a lot better than I remembered it working when I was younger. You can basically customize the frequency of attack, abilities, and item usage, something that comes in super handy for Mr. Spam 3 magic attacks on one enemy over here. But despite my complaining, Donald and Goofy are not that bad of companions, and they actually do a pretty good job of splitting up the work when fighting a horde of enemies, or distracting a boss while you recover, or so on. And even late game, they do a pretty good job of supporting you in fights. But going back to the boss fight itself, where we met Donald and Goofy, we're now going toe-to-toe with Guard Armor, a Heartless that's segmented into 5 different parts and can send out those parts to act on their own, or recall them at any point. Your goal is to break down each of these parts one by one until he's by himself and you can finish him off.
This is a fantastic first big bad boss to fight, and a really well designed one at that.
Guard Armor has multiple different moves, all dependent upon what parts he has left, what's attached, what's not, how much health he has left, and so on. You have to do a good job of maintaining your spatial awareness of all the parts at all times so that you don't lose track of one and end up getting sideswiped. It's right on that cusp of difficulty. Hard enough to die maybe once or twice so you can learn, but not hard enough that you'll get frustrated. I like this fight a lot. With Guard Armor defeated and Donald and Goofy finally a part of your team, it's time for the party to start their adventure and head to their first world.
As mentioned earlier, the game is broken up into multiple different worlds, Disney worlds to be more precise, and with that comes worlds based on Disney movies. Because of that, I wanted to get a little bit more prepared. I love Disney movies to death, but I haven't watched some of them in years, so I went out and bought Blu-rays of every Disney movie featured in the game. That's right, there's so many. Up first, Alice in...
Wonderland is a recommended first Disney World to go to in Kingdom Hearts, and in my opinion, a pretty confusing one to start with.
While the Disney worlds are tied extremely loosely to the original story from the movie, they still share very similar environments, story beats, themes, and rules. And while I enjoy that idea, tell me, what are the rules of Alice in Wonderland? Because watching this thing makes me feel like somebody slipped something into my drink.
Honestly, it probably has something to do with the fact that this is one of Sora's first experiences of the outside world, and how not everyone is going to be logical. In fact, you may say some are a little mad. But regardless of their choice of world, Wonderland's level design leans heavily into the confusing world of the movie. There are about 10 different entrances into this one room, and each one puts you in a unique position of the room. One may be on the wall, the ceiling, you may be too big to fit through any of the doors, or you may have to use that bigness to help you find another way out. And that direction with this one room carries into other aspects of the world. Flowers that will drop a rock, but you can't use the rock unless you're big, and you can't get big without giving a flower a potion, and you can't get small without eating, and you can't eat without hitting this tree, which you need to be big for, and so on. The wacky nature of the Alice in Wonderland movie is perfectly captured in the puzzles and direction of the world, and the player needs to lean into the madness and think like the movie in order to find a way forward. Now, despite that, there are actually only 5 rooms in the world total, but it's the way they use those rooms that I think it makes up for it. Each room has a ton of puzzles that take you into the other rooms in different ways and leads you to either rewards or progression to the main objective of Wonderland. I would say the only room in this world that felt a little rushed to me was the Mad Tea Party room. That scene was always one of my favorites in the movie, and here it just feels kind of shoehorned in. You have the scene built out and you can interact with the table and the tea, but the Mad Hatter and the March Hare are reduced to a portrait on the wall instead of being actual characters you can talk to. I'm not too sure why they did this, other than they couldn't find any real reason to have you interact with them, or they couldn't think of a way to interweave them into the story, but at least they didn't completely forget about them. Similar to the movie, Alice is put on trial by the Queen of Hearts, and Sora intervenes, claiming the real culprit is the Heartless. With the help of the always baffling Cheshire Cat, Sora looks around all of Wonderland trying to find evidence to help out Alice, and this is where all the exploring comes in. You're asked to look high and low for evidence, but it's not required to find all of them. However, if you do, you're given an early reward of the Blizzard ability. A really nice reward since there are a lot of fire-based enemies all over Wonderland.
Now let's talk battles. While it can be pretty standard for games to only have one boss per level or world, Kingdom Hearts likes to throw in quite a few per world. It's not always boss battles, sometimes it's just a battle you have to finish to progress through the game. These are usually coined event battles.
Wonderland contains 2 battles. The first comes when you present your evidence to the Queen, and she then provides her own. She then randomizes them and asks you to pick one, and then that will tell us who the culprit is.
Politics, am I right?
While it is possible to accidentally choose Donald and Goofy, keeping them out of the upcoming battle, I never had it happen to me whenever I was recording footage and chose correctly, so it was never a problem. But either way, a battle against the Queen's army of cards ensues while they try to protect the device, keeping Alice imprisoned. This battle is pretty simple, all things considered. All you have to do is well in the device until it breaks. The cards will try to hit you, but they don't do a ton of damage and just kind of body the hits that you're trying to inflict on the device. But this isn't the main fight of Wonderland. That would be against the Heartless plaguing this world, Trickmaster. While not the worst, this fight kinda sucks. Trickmaster's hitbox is above his legs, and they make you do this fight small. Because of that, you spend most of this fight just jumping up and hitting him once over and over and over again. It's a pretty dissatisfying fight. You could parkour your way on top of the table and try to land an air combo on him, but by the time you've done that, you could have just jumped up in the air and hit him one jump at a time. But even then, half the time your attacks don't even land. So you'll sit there on loop, endlessly jumping and praying that one of your attacks makes contact. He thankfully collapses after a few hits, making it easier to hit him, but it's just such a boring fight. A couple of attacks he does have can hit hard though, like one where he'll lunge down at you or one where he'll launch fireballs at you, but they're pretty easy to avoid if you know they're coming, and because of that, I always dread having to do this fight. Not from the difficulty, just mostly from the tedium.
Wonderland overall was a lot better than I remembered as a kid. I remember getting lost for hours just trying to figure out what the game wanted from me. But understanding the mechanics of the interactables in this game, in addition to leaning into the madness of Wonderland, makes for a pretty fun world to explore. Just wish that boss was a little bit more enjoyable. Now, let's see if we can go the distance as we travel to... Alright, you see this movie? This movie right here? I need you to take everything you know about it and throw it out. The inclusion of Hercules in the first Kingdom Hearts is to serve one purpose and one purpose only, to add tournaments to the game. Not only that, but Nomura must really like Hercules a lot because it's practically in every Kingdom Hearts game. Listen, I love this movie too, but every time I see this world in a Kingdom Hearts game, I'm like, all right, I get it.
Going back to the tournament thing, it works, and it's what makes the most sense, but it would have been really cool to explore the world of Hercules a little bit more in depth outside of some random Coliseum. There's literally only 2 walkable areas, and that's just for you to walk up to Danny DeVito to ask if you can participate in tournaments, and that's kind of pathetic.
I'm gonna go more in depth with the multiple different tournaments later, but for now, there is some stuff they have you do to progress the game.
With the help of one of my favorite Disney villains, James Woods, Sora enters the Coliseum tournament where he's pitted against Cloud himself. You're not required to win this fight. You can actually lose and the story will still progress, but it's a good chance to practice your skills against enemies that are the same size as you. He has 3 separate attacks with a pretty wide range, and I like to bait him to do one, dodge accordingly, and retaliate. This goes back to what I mentioned earlier when I said that there is more to the game strategy-wise other than simply button mashing. If I went into this fight swinging wildly, he actually guards me and follows up with a punishing attack.
Fast Me was definitely a button masher. It's really nice to see that I've not only grown as a player, but my brain has expanded since then too. Oh. Hello? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. It's my doctor. He says that's actually a tumor.
But that level of improvement became even more apparent with the actual boss of this world, Cerberus. As a kid, repeat playthroughs of this game always scared me because I always remembered having a hard time with this fight. That inner fear came bubbling back up again as I was getting ready for this fight. But as I was actually fighting him and started remembering his patterns, I was like, is this it? Is this what scared me as a kid? Cerberus takes ages at telegraphing his attacks, and every attack he does is surprisingly easy to dodge, even his projectile-based ones. However, if he does manage to land a hit on you, it will hurt quite a bit, so playing more defensively for this fight sways the battle pretty hard in your favor. Because of that, he's not the most challenging. He's a fun fight. I mean, you're literally fighting the Lord of the Dead's pet, but after learning the best way to take him down, I don't think I'll ever have to worry about him again.
And that's it. That's all Olympus Coliseum has to offer progression-wise. There's a bit more technically, but it's completely optional. You could keep going after this fight and have no idea that there's just a tiny bit more left after this. It's nice that they give you the option, but it would have been a little bit better if they just made it more obvious to the story that this world wasn't complete. But we'll talk about that later. For now, let's go to the Phil Collins world.
This is by far one of my least favorite worlds in the Kingdom Hearts series. The entire level design and structure is a complete jumbled up mess with some really weird traversal mechanics that do nothing but waste your time.
I really don't like this world, and I think my disdain for this world caused me to stay away from the actual movie for the longest time. But let me go watch Tarzan real quick and see if maybe...
One amazing movie later.
No, that was absolutely phenomenal. What happened here? Where is Phil Collins?
Let me ease up a bit here. The environments are spot on with the movie, way better than Alice and Hercules was. There are a ton of iconic locations and moments that they did a great job encapsulating in this world, but the issues come with how they want you to see this world. For starters, this is one of the longer worlds in the game, with several different locales to go to. It matches semi-closely to the story of Tarzan, but its pacing is all over the place, and if you hadn't seen the actual movie, you would have absolutely no idea what's going on most of the time. In order for you to get around in this world, they have these 2 minigames that you are forced to play in order to get from one location to the next. There's vine swinging and vine sliding, with the latter being something that you are doing constantly since it's the fastest way back to the bottom, while vine swinging is the only way back to the top, unless you climb these 2 specific vine walls to skip the minigame. But even then, it was so much of a headache to get around to those vine walls that I would just take advantage of the save points to warp myself between the top and the bottom. That is, until they caught on to my schemes and locked me out from the inside! It also doesn't do the world any favors that it suffers from the same issue I mentioned in the Traverse Town section, where it just wants you to wander in and out of certain areas to trigger cutscenes or events in order to make the story progress without telling me where to go, what it wants, or how any of this makes sense with Clayton, the gorillas, or why Jane got captured. Where's Jane? I don't know. Somewhere near the treehouse. There she is. How do I save her? The black fruit looks suspicious. What does a black fruit have to do with Tarzan or Phil Collins?
Listen, this world is just an amalgamation of all the wrong problems with this game. You can't help it. They just had a lot of they had some good ideas, and they just tried to put too much in with not a whole lot of explaining.
To give it a chance here, there are moments where it gives you a decent idea of where to go, but half of the time is spent wandering around hoping to find the area you wanted to go and praying that it's not the treehouse again so I don't have to play the stupid vine sliding minigame again. Deep Jungle just feels too far gone for me to make any notable suggestions to improve it in any way. Maybe a skip minigame button? That'd be cool. That'd be a good start.
But I think the biggest issue is the giant question mark of where the game is wanting me to go half the time. I don't want an answer, and I don't want my hand to be held. I just want a sense of direction. But enough about all that. Let's talk about the battles.
We've got 3 here, with the first 2 being against the secondary antagonist of Tarzan, the leopard Sabor. The fight against Sabor is pretty simple since he's more of a mini-boss. He only really has a few attacks that can be easily dodged and blocked. However, similar to previous bosses, he does hit really hard, and I actually did die to him when I couldn't get my potion off in time. But overall, I don't think anyone is going to have a problem with him, especially since now you can start switching out your party members. That's right, you're not just stuck with Donald and Goofy. You can use characters from each of their respective worlds. So in this case, you can have Tarzan join the party, which is super sick.
In this game specifically, I don't really rely on my party members too much since they hadn't really perfected their AI yet. But I can admit that the inclusion of multiple different Disney characters being able to join your party when you go to their respective worlds was such an amazing choice.
I wish I could actually say more about this feature, but if I'm going to be honest, I tended to stick with Donald and Goofy for a couple of reasons. One, it was easier to just keep accessories on them rather than giving the good stuff to temporary party members. 2, I could never decide whether to get rid of Donald or Goofy. And 3, well, we're gonna save that one for later. The final fight in Deep Jungle is against the evil huntsman, Fall in the Darkness, Clayton. Not Clayton. Teamed up with the heartless Stealth Sneak. This battle is super cool. Always loved the idea of this fight. Stealth Sneak is a heartless that takes on the appearance of a chameleon and thusly can blend in with its environments by becoming invisible. It's a very cleverly made heartless, and this battle was both engaging and hilarious. The idea of a hunter blasting a 14-year-old kid with a shotgun in a game rated E for everyone has always been extremely funny to me. But ignoring that, this fight is great when you're fighting both of them, but the minute they become separated, this fight becomes kind of a headache. Clayton is the only one you have to defeat for the fight to end, and the Heartless is kind of a pushover. And it's not like Clayton is hard, he's just kind of a baby. Clayton will jump 3 stories up to a rock that's impossible for you to get to without parkouring your way up, and the entire time he's up there, he'll unload an endless supply of potions to heal himself. I'll knock him down, and then he'll just jump right back up. Get down from there and face me like a man! I just had to wait until he got on ground level and just bully him in a corner until he died. A pretty meh fight for a pretty meh world. With Clayton defeated, the Heartless also goes down, crushing Clayton in the process and killing him.
But that's not how it happened in the movie, right? Let me go watch this again and see how he...
One childhood trauma later.
Never mind, that is so much worse.
With Deep Jungle completed, there didn't seem to be a way forward to other worlds. That's when the party suggests that we make a trip back to Traverse Town to see if we can find a way forward.
This happens a couple times throughout the Kingdom Hearts series where they want you to make trips back to other worlds, but this revisit serves as a way of fleshing out the Final Fantasy characters just a bit more, and also giving you a little bit more context to the story that's unfolding.
But basically, you go ask Sid, who's a master at traveling from world to world, for help, and while he's getting you hooked up, you decide to go check out a legend about the bell tower in Traverse Town, where it's said if it's run 3 times, something will happen. Oh, and something happens, alright. The giant Heartless we defeated earlier reappears, but this time in a totally new form called Opposite Armor. This fight works pretty much the same as the fight against Guard Armor, except this thing's got a few new moves up its sleeve. It's faster, hits harder, and it's got a freaking cannon! But ultimately, this fight is still not much of a challenge. More so another test of how much better you've gotten since you were here last time.
And that's pretty much all the revisit has to offer. Like I said, most everything that's presented when you come here was for story reasons, but I at least wanted to mention the boss battle here. But now that Sid's got us all hooked up, it's time to head to a whole new world. Careful, steady, easy now. It's not that I'm scared of heights, it's just that I'm scared of falling from them. Oh, hi. Yeah, I'm not singing this song. I don't want Disney executives knocking on my door. Nice weather, huh? So anyways, Agrabah is quite possibly the best designed Disney world in Kingdom Hearts.
I'm pretty serious about that. They did a really good job making this world fun to explore, but yet self-contained enough that you don't get lost. On top of that, it's filled to the brim with battles. They aren't the best battles in the game, but what I'm getting at is that there's variety here.
Now, just because I'm saying this is the best designed world doesn't mean that it's my favorite. I feel like I need to make that apparent. This world isn't a lot of people's favorite, but I'm saying that from a technical and purely design and direction aspect, that I think this is the best Disney world. Keyword Disney there. Anyways.
Loosely following the plot of the movie, and I do mean loosely, the world is broken up into two major sections, the Streets of Agrabah and the Cave of Wonders, with the first being a multi-layered city with nooks and crannies to hide goodies and potentially street rats. It's not super big, but it's big enough to give you the vibes they were going for in the movie. Honestly, if I had one complaint about this area, it's that it should maybe be broadened out just a bit, because it's really just 3 areas that stretch out in front of you with 2 side rooms connected to them, and once you see that, it makes the streets feel a little small and claustrophobic. If they had just added and interweaved a few more areas, this would have been perfect. But speaking of interweaving, it's time to get lost in the Cave of Wonders. On the surface, the Cave of Wonders seems pretty straightforward. 4 linear rooms leading to a blocked exit. Huh. Yeah, either that or your experience is accidentally falling into the abyss only to find yourself in a maze-like series of waterways. So yeah, the Cave of Wonders is essentially a maze. In order to make your way through it, you're going to have to find a pillar to knock down, which will open up that blocked exit.
At a glance, it seems like another instance of the game not telling you what it wants you to do, and while that is the case, they do a really good job of kind of guiding you to the correct answer.
Huh, the exit's blocked. Maybe there's something I missed. Oh look, a waterway to explore. What's this gem? I can interact with it. Oh, it opened up a secret. I should look for more. What's this pillar? I can examine it. It says it goes to the top, and it has a reticle. I bet I can attack this. There's a nice sense of direction to guide the player exactly where they need to go so that they don't get helplessly lost. It's a design decision that I wish something like Deep Jungle had a little bit more of.
And I feel like I really need to emphasize this because I know that I'm going to get attacked in the comments about this. I'm not trying to say that this game is completely devoid of good direction, and I'm definitely not trying to say that I need like waypoint markers or something like that. To be completely honest, I hate those. I just want my sense of direction to have a flow to it. Something that doesn't require me to run around all haphazardly looking for a solution to a problem that I don't know. Something as simple as, oh, I don't know, you're trapped at the bottom of a ship and you need to find your way out. The game doesn't tell you how to get up there, just that you need to. Something like that. We'll talk about that world in a bit. But do you get what I mean? Anyways, if you decide to leave an angry comment, at least do me the courtesy of finishing the video, unlike some people did for my Zelda video.
Now, let's talk about the many battles they have you do here. The first is against the Heartless Pot Centipede. This fight is actually really cool, and unfortunately probably the best fight in Agrabah. The Pot Centipede is made up of a ton of other Heartless called Pot Spiders, and he'll scurry his way through the many districts of Agrabah where you have to chase him down and break him apart. This fight is all about patience and divide and conquer. If you get a little overzealous, you're going to get swarmed and get the crap beat out of you. You need to use your party members to your advantage and have them work on the pot spiders while you work on the main body, while also being very careful not to overstay your welcome since the attacks from the pot centipede hurt. If you hit it enough, it'll split apart, which sounds good, but that's actually when it starts attacking the most. Stay patient, be aware of your surroundings, and this fight shouldn't be too difficult. Honestly, a really good fight. Not my favorite one, it's not like it's memorable or anything, it just shines compared to the other fights in this world. Like the Cave of Wonders. Yes, you have to fight the giant cat head entrance thing to the Cave of Wonders. This fight falls in line with something I've coined platform bosses,
Which just so happens to be my 13th reason why.
Platform bosses are the absolute worst. What could have been a really cool fight has now been made abysmally unbearable because you're forced to use a janky platform system to fight it. Tony the Tiger has 2 glowing eyes with a ton of HP on each of them, and you gotta deplete them all. That's it. Except he's constantly trying to shake you off, shoot a wall of fire, blast projectiles out of his eyes, and throw the entire population of Heartless at you while you clumsily try to climb on his stupid head. I hate this dumb fight and everything it stands for, but at least that one sucks in a frustrating sort of way. The last 2 fights against Jafar are just slow, monotonous, and boring. There are 3 platforms on the outer edge of the room, and he'll just gently float towards one randomly, and when he stops, you jump up, hit him a few times, and then he flies away and repeats. It's so boring. He does have a few attacks, but most of them are either targeted at the center of the room, which you're almost never at, or targeted at you, but it doesn't do enough damage to kill you, and you can just heal back up immediately with Cure. He also forces Genie to fight you, but he always yells before he punches you, and even if he does manage to hit you, it drops healing orbs.
I didn't think it could get worse than that, but it gets so much worse.
Jafar transforms into an all-powerful genie to fight you, and you think, oh, this'll be sick! Only to watch Jafar fail to throw rocks at you for 5 minutes while you play tag with Gilbert Godfrey and smack around the lamp he's holding for far too long. I'm not kidding. That's all this fight is. I got hit once, and it was on purpose to see how hard he hits. He doesn't, like at all. He would have had to hit me like 4 times to kill me, and that wasn't happening. I'm super shocked at how unbelievably bad this fight is. I would go as far as saying Darkseid the tutorial fight is more of a threat than Genie Jafar is. Like, you couldn't have come up with a better idea than this? But at least you get to fly on the magic carpet after this.
Now, as you know, I went to Disney World for that bit earlier, but I wasn't going to let that trip go to waste. I also planned on recording my summarized thoughts on a few of the worlds. So, Disney Club, what'd you think of Agrabah?
It was alright.
Was that it? Was that all I said? Okay, well, yeah, it was all right. While the world structure was top-notch, I felt like the bosses fell flat and fell flat hard. So overall, I like Agrabah. I just wish the fights gave me just a little bit more to look forward to on repeat playthroughs. Now, we were going to go to another world, but we missed our mark by just a bit and ended up inside the belly of...
Oh boy, Monstro. If it wasn't obvious, this world is based on the movie Pinocchio, and more specifically takes place inside of the well that swallows the titular character and his father at the end of the movie.
Which is a really good idea, I like it a lot. Pinocchio's world is destroyed, but he managed to escape because Monstro did, so instead of exploring that, we get to explore the inside of a well. Gross.
But ignoring how disgusting that sounds, I actually like exploring this world quite a bit. It's definitely the most maze-like in nature. The first area is just a bunch of torn up ship parts that Monstro has swallowed, allowing for some platforming that could lead to some pretty good treasure. But once you actually start exploring deeper inside, that's where things get interesting. You're provided with several doorways that in turn lead to even more doorways as you try to find your way out of the labyrinth that is Monstro's innards.
And to avoid being a hypocrite here, yes, this is very confusing to traverse, almost to a fault, and I can admit that, but something about trying to navigate this maze is very satisfying to me.
Like, I get it. Everything, and I do mean everything, looks exactly the same, and on top of that, each room is labeled numerically with no real unique name, and to add even more on top of that, you're required to enter the same numbered rooms to access doors you couldn't enter earlier, thus meaning that you're going through numerical rooms in a non-numerical order. It's a confusing mess, and if you don't have a good sense of direction, you're screwed.
But I do have a good sense of direction.
Sorry to interrupt, but after I wrote this script, I was hit with some earth-shattering news. Apparently you can tell which way to go in this maze because each doorway will light up green and feature the Heartless Green Requiem above each of the correct paths. I never knew that. This game has been out for 22 years and I'm just now learning this. If it wasn't for this tweet by KeyCast, I would have never figured that out. So, yeah, there you go. If you get lost, just follow the green pathways. That's all you have to do. Anyways, back to your regularly scheduled programming.
It's different than how it was with the other worlds. With those, you had no goal. You just had to walk into or out of the right room at the right time. But here you have a goal. Find Pinocchio. Something that's affirmed even further when you find out Riku has stolen him. Wait, what? Riku? What's he doing here?
Story stuff, don't worry about it.
Anyways, making your way through the gross mess, you not only find Riku and Pinocchio, but our first encounter with Parasite Cage, where he kidnaps Pinocchio and holds him hostage. Seeing no other choice, Riku teams up with Sora to help take down the Heartless. And by team up, I mean he walks back and forth in the background and does absolutely nothing. In fairness, this fight really isn't much of anything. You just kind of wail on the thing till it's dead, since it really only has one attack, and that's for it to slap the hell out of you. Because you're gonna get smacked around a lot, it was at this point in my playthrough where I started utilizing the arrow ability a lot more frequently. I noticed how much less damage I was taking with it equipped since Donald casted it on me, and I decided to keep myself well defended for the rest of the game.
I bring this up only because I feel like arrow is pretty essential to the strength build. You spend a lot of time close to the enemy, and the last thing you want is to be just popped once and immediately be near death. So keeping it on makes for a much smoother play experience.
After the fight, Parasite Cage runs away and it's time to chase after him. But on your way to him, you come across your first shared ability, High Jump. Shared abilities are abilities you don't have to spend ability points on, and everyone in your party gets to use it. Think of them as better means of exploring the worlds and different environments. High Jump, surprise surprise, lets you jump higher, which is perfect because this world is specifically designed for that ability. Once you have it, several areas you had explored previously, whether in this world or others, will have new spots you'll have access to. Monstro specifically has a ton of new chests that you can now reach if you so choose to go back, but it's completely optional. What's more obvious that you can reach with your new High Jump is a doorway in the first area that takes you immediately to your rematch with a Parasite Cage, and this time he's a bit more of a challenge. No longer tied down to having a child and— oh man, I almost slipped there. With Pinocchio no longer in— no, that's worse. Free of Pinocchio, Parasite Cage has a few new moves up his sleeve. First off, he's now surrounded by acid. Gross. And said acid will slowly drain your health if you stand on it, so that's a no-go. But this thing's new moves are designed for not only pushing you onto that acid, but also burping in your face to damage you over time. Man, I hate this. In a gross way, not a design way. The only other difference here is that after you damage him enough, he'll fall over and allow you to attack his caged up insides, dropping health orbs in the process. This fight is pretty well balanced, I gotta say. He doesn't have a super wide range of moves, but he makes up for that with a super tight space you're having to fight him in. I really enjoy this fight.
That's really all there is to Monstro. If you can get through the maze quickly, you'll be in and out of that world pretty quick. But just because it's short doesn't mean it's not good. It's short, fun, gross, and to the point. I like it quite a bit. Disney Club, what'd you think?
It was good.
Did I really not record anything else? I was there for 7 days. Well, now that we're done with our little detour at Monstro, let's head back to our original destination, Under the Sea.
Let's address the elephant in the room.
The pictures on Amazon made it look bigger.
This being set in the world of The Little Mermaid means that we must also become a merperson. This changes up the gameplay quite dramatically, as you'll now be swimming around instead of running around. The way they do this is by having the circle button, formerly jumping, cause you to ascend, while the square button causes you to descend, formerly your guard and dodge roll button. That's right, you can't dodge or make evasive movements in this world, and to make it even harder, you can't do a lot of your special abilities you had unlocked up to this point, like Sonic Blade, which is going to make this world even tougher. Regardless of all the nerfs Sora received, they actually did a fairly good job of making the enemies in this world balanced around the loss of mobility. There was never really a point where I was like, oh man, if only I could have dodge rolled out of the way. While it would be nice, it's not super necessary. It's more of a struggle getting used to the movement more than anything else. But it didn't take me too long to get used to it, especially since locking on causes you to automatically swim towards them regardless of their y-axis coordinates.
But the whole y-axis thing adds a whole other layer to the world that both helps it and also harms it tremendously.
It gives the world a whole new extra depth that none of the other worlds could really compete with, and something I think a world like Agrabah could use. The second room you come across is absolutely massive and can be explored freely as you gracefully swim around. There are a ton of different treasures you can find, and even some hidden behind using specific spells to unlock them. But this room is just the tip of the iceberg. There are just so many large and expansive rooms to explore in this world. This may quite honestly be the largest Disney world, with Agrabah or Deep Jungle being a close second. There's just so many different areas to go to, so many little corners to explore. I love it.
But there's just one problem with all of that.
They did it again, didn't they?
Of course they did it again!
Not once, not twice, but on 4 separate occasions, they don't say a word to you and just expect you to Sherlock Holmes it using almost little to nothing to go off of. Let's see if I have this right. Mrs. Satchelton was murdered on the night of November 17th, 1989, but the cause of murder is unknown. After further investigation, I have come across the following clues. A blue piece of string harvested from the fibers of a plant in Southeast Asia, the remains of a former sub-zero liquid that had been held in a square-like fashion, an uneaten banana, and Mrs. Satchelton's unmoving body. Putting all this together.
Drowned.
This world is so massive that they couldn't think of a logical way to guide the player to the palace other than painting giant tridents on the side of the wall to point you in the right direction. But after that, you're on your own. The first offender is the stupid dolphins. This part confused me to death as a kid. You reach a point where you need to swim against a current you were pushed against earlier, and you're told in the game to help Ariel look for something, but not where. You can kind of come to the conclusion that it may be in that current, but there's no way to know for sure since no one said it'll be behind a current or something like that. The only thing you get, and this is totally missable if you don't think about it, is a side comment from Flounder saying that there are big fish that like to swim up current, but you only get this if you talk to him. I guess that's kind of on me for not asking NPCs for directions or whatever, but what's really inexcusable is the uncertainty of the dolphins themselves. There are two of them, one in an area where it does nothing but swim in circles, and another where you need it in order to swim upstream. But half the time, the stupid thing doesn't even show up. Where is he? Where did he go? Is he running late?
Harold, you're gonna be late for work again.
Oh, could you get off my back for 5 minutes?
Stop it, Harold. You're scaring the kids.
And when he does show up and you grab a hold of him, you better not let go, or else you may get the impression that he doesn't do anything. You have to stay on, and he'll take you directly to where you need to go to progress the story.
But I'm only projecting here. When I did my replay, I knew exactly where to go and what to do, but Past Me didn't. I'm sure a lot of people on their first play had no idea where to go either. But I don't know, maybe I was just a stupid kid. Oh, I was a stupid kid, but let me know down below if this confused you on your first playthrough.
What did stump me for some stupid reason on this playthrough was where I needed to go after they show the cutscene where Ursula tempts Ariel into giving her the trident. I didn't realize that that was them telling me to go to the palace. I swam all over the stupid ocean before I accidentally found the right doorway to trigger the cutscene. That one's a tiny bit on me, but it still sucks that it's not super clear on what they wanted me to do or look for. I spent that time looking for where that cutscene was taking place, and once I found it, nothing happened. So I wasn't sure where they wanted me to go. Only by dumb luck did I find the right passageway. There's 2 more instances of this happening, but it's a little bit more telegraphed. There's a point where we need to go to Ursula's lair, and it's obviously behind the rock with a giant blue dragon looking thing painted on it, but if you missed that, good luck finding it. And the last one is a little bit more dumb. After your first fight with Ursula, she runs away in the opposite direction of where the game wants you to go. And then you're rewarded with a mermaid kick shared ability, which basically lets you swim faster and up against currents like the dolphins. The implication here being that you need to swim up that same current and go through a doorway you haven't been to.
I've played this game several times, so by this point I know that's where Ursula is, but I can imagine someone having an incredibly hard time figuring that out and noticing that they haven't been in that one specific room yet. But yet again, I want to know what all of you think, because on the surface layer, this comes off as one of the most confusing to traverse worlds in the entire game.
Just touching on a few of the better aspects of the world to leave a better taste in y'all's mouth, they actually did a really good job of organizing the layout of all the different areas. If you have a good sense of direction, you'll be able to navigate this world pretty seamlessly. There's a lot of shortcuts and hidden paths that make looping back a breeze. And as a fan of the From Software games, that's something that I can really appreciate in a game like this. A good way to get around that doesn't feel cumbersome or a burden is always welcome.
Now let's talk about the battles. Best Disney battles in the whole game, hands down. It's funny because this is kind of like a flip of Agrabah, where I think the sense of direction isn't good here, but the battles are. Maybe this is the better world. Huh.
Both fights are against Ursula, but in completely different ways. In the first fight, you battle her in her lair along with her eels, Flotsam and Jetsam. She'll swim around throwing potions or something in her cauldron while Flotsam and Jetsam smack you around a bit. I'm gonna be honest, I don't really know what to do here, and I feel like most people don't. From what I understand, you need to wail on her cauldron with the same type of magic over and over again to get it to explode and daze her, so you can start beating her up, and this seemed to work some of the time, so we're gonna go with that. I really like this fight for a couple of reasons. One, it always feels like a new fight when I go back, purely because I can never remember exactly what to do other than I have to use magic. Two, Flotsam and Jetsam are a well-designed mechanic to the fight because they not only act as a way of damaging you and getting in your way, but they also act as a means of getting you your magic back so you can go back to wailing on the cauldron. And three, Ursula's stupid laugh she does during this attack. The repeated use of UrsulaLaugh.mp3 just always cracked me up. The last battle is a doozy. You're going up a giant, trident-wielding, overpowered Ursula. This fight is a make or break for a lot of people. It is not an easy fight in the slightest. Ursula's attacks are relentless. There's very few opportunities to attack for a long amount of time, and you'll spend a lot of your time studying her moves to figure out which ones you can swim away from and which ones you should tank. First and foremost, always have arrow equipped. You'll thank me later. This will help against most attacks, but will be especially helpful for avoiding her bite attack and bubble attack, which don't do much damage when you have it equipped. I'd definitely say the attacks to avoid are her laser-based attacks, either from her mouth or from the sky. However, the unfortunate thing is that she has sky lasers attacking you at pretty much all times. They don't do a ton of damage, but they can stack up pretty quickly if you don't manage your spacing and timing.
But most importantly, and this is probably the best advice I can give, be patient. If you're struggling with this fight, give it some time, learn her moves, equip arrow, and with time, you can do it.
This is by far my favorite Disney World fight in this game. It requires a lot from the player, and I'm here for it. I love having to manage my items and magic to make sure I can stay afloat, while also dodging and weaving her attacks, and then simultaneously trying to get in my own. A truly spectacular fight.
And that's Atlantica, an altogether pretty mixed bag that I think in the end is probably one of my favorites, but that's only with these things on. I'm sure if I came into this a little bit more new and fresh, I probably would have been incredibly frustrated. So I could definitely see why someone might have a problem with this world. But for now, let's set these aside while we head to... What's this? What's this? It's... I can't wait to curb stomp you in these dumb, ugly Rick Owens shoes. If you got that, seek a psychiatrist. Anyways, happy Halloween! I love Halloween. I get pretty excited for it every year and decorate the house accordingly. But I never got too into Halloween movies growing up. I know, how very un-Halloween of me. But it just was never a part of my childhood. And nowadays, of course, I've seen movies like Coraline and Corpse Bride and, of course, the phenomenal Nightmare Before Christmas. So believe me when I say, after watching this movie again, I get why there's such a loving fan base for this movie. So with that, please don't be mad at me when I say that, while it's awesome that this is featured in Kingdom Hearts, I don't think they did the movie justice.
Most of that stems from how you get around in the world. Instead of simply walking through a door like we've been doing for the past 15 hours of gameplay, now you have to get from area to area in the most arbitrary ways possible. Crossing through a coffin, riding a floating fire platform, going through the sewer.
But that's not really the problem. In fact, that does feel very much inspired by the movie. But it's the underlying mechanics of Kingdom Hearts that makes it a problem.
In order to interact with anything in this game, as I've said, you go to the bottom of your command menu and select examine, which would be fine if it wasn't for the fact that you can't examine something while you're in the middle of combat. That means that every time you want to go from one room to another, you essentially need to clear out the entire room or immediate area before you're allowed to go to the next area. Now, this isn't really an issue when you first get there. I always say that it's best for you to fight everything in a game like this to keep from having to mindlessly grind. But if you have to backtrack for any reason, you're going to be grinding on complete and utter accident. So if you get lost at any point, it gets super frustrating having to fight enemies over and over again just to figure out where to go.
To be completely fair, this shouldn't be an issue since the entire world is essentially a giant hallway with no branching paths. But this becomes a bit of a problem if you ever decide to come back here for in-game content.
You can kind of think of it as a giant looping circle. You start out at the town square, and as you go through all the cemeteries, there's a cave entrance that puts you back in the town square, and the cycle continues. There's no real branching paths that interweave with each other like in Wonderland or Atlantica or the Cave of Wonders, so forcing you to do these arbitrary actions in order for you to be able to go to the next room is super annoying.
However, I can admit, of all the things for me to complain about, this one is probably the most nitpicky of them all. I just don't want to have to get bombarded with enemies every time I try to get from point A to point B.
It's also a bit unfortunate that we didn't get Christmas Town, but as a supplement to that, we got to explore a fully realized Oogie Manor, which looks super sick. It's all mangled and cool looking and essentially a giant jungle gym that you need to parkour yourself through. It's definitely my favorite part of this world, other than the times you...
My disappointment is immeasurable.
But once you reach the top of it, you get your first battle against Lock, Shock, and Barrel.
Sit still, you little creeps, and let me beat you to a pulp!
That's essentially what this fight kind of boils down to. They're just jumping around the room wildly, and you match their pacing and also flail around wildly till they KO. What we really need to talk about is the next battle, Oogie Boogie. This is definitely one of my favorite themed fights in any Kingdom Hearts game. Oogie loves his dice and gambling, and his entire fight revolves around that. He'll throw out his dice, and based on what he gets will determine what he attacks with, whether it's Heartless or giant buzzsaws or blades or so on. Once his attack is finished, you need to close him in by standing on a button in the same area he's in. Then you start beating up that giant bag of bugs till he's nothing but mush. This fight is in no way, shape, or form difficult. In fact, I'd say it's just a little harder than the fight with Darkseid. It's the theming here that I like. It does a really good job of encapsulating Oogie's torture room from the movie and turning that into a boss arena. That on top of the randomness of the fight makes for a pretty memorable time, especially if you love the movie. However, what doesn't make me think of the movie is what happens immediately after that fight. For some reason, and I have absolutely no idea why, Oogie turns into the manor himself and gets covered in a ton of dark blobs that you then have to go around destroying by platforming yourself around the manor.
I'm sure this has something to do with Oogie being corrupted by the darkness, which is exactly what the wiki page says and is a very Kingdom Hearts thing to do. But to me, it just feels like they didn't know how to end the world.
Like, Jafar turning into the genie makes sense, and it fits the quote, boundaries of the original story. This just seems a little out of left field to me. Regardless of how I feel about the execution, I do actually like this section of having to find all the dark blobs around the manor. It's one of the few platforming fights I don't mind, since it's basically like exploring Oogie Manor 2, Electric Boogaloo. It's reminiscent of the first one, with bits and pieces of places you've already been to, but messed up enough that it feels like you're exploring a totally new environment. That feeling doesn't stay long though, because after you've defeated Oogie Manor, it doesn't go back to normal. It's just straight up destroyed, thus getting rid of my favorite area in this world. Neat. And then after that, something even weirder happens that cements my theory that they didn't know how to end this. You see, throughout the game, Sora has been on another mission to find keyholes in every world.
Story stuff. We'll get there when we get there.
And every keyhole has been in some pretty obvious or noteworthy spots. Inside the deepest part of the Cave of Wonders, inside Ariel's Grotto, the literal door in Wonderland. You get the idea. But here, it's just kind of on the floor where Oogie's manor was? Huh? Why? Why was something that important hidden there? It's not like anyone gets to choose where the keyhole is, but it's usually in a pretty important spot thematically. Put it somewhere like in Halloween Town Square or Jack's house or Dr. Finkelstein's lab or something. Just seems weird.
And maybe I'm getting too in the weeds here. I honestly probably am. Because I still enjoy Halloween Town every time I play, minus the few backtracking complaints I had. But regardless of those grievances, I still enjoy Halloween Town, if not for the design, but for the theming, the characters, the environments, and the... I guess what I'm trying to say is that I have very mixed feelings with this world, and I have a hard time putting it into words. So how about this? Do you like Nightmare Before Christmas? If so, boy do I have a world for you. Now, let's go from something that didn't influence my childhood to something that did. Pirates! Good old Peter Pan, a movie that has almost no controversial past that I could possibly think of. Nope, not a one. Anyways, I love this movie. It's probably what planted the seed for my love of pirates. And while the land of Neverland expands many different locales, all themed around the imagination of a child, the world in the first Kingdom Hearts focuses on only one. Pirates, baby! Yo ho ho and a bottle of rum! The One Piece is real! More specifically, it takes place on Captain Hook's ship, the Jolly Roger. And even more specifically, you're thrown in the bottom of the ship's brig with none other than Peter Pan. And you gotta work with him in order to break your way out and find yourself back to the deck of the ship. You might remember me using this as an example earlier, but I love this. You're given a goal, flat out, and you need to find your way through the many chambers of the ship. I might be a little biased because, you know, pirates, but this is absolutely one of my favorites. The ship is designed in a way to interweave you in and out of doorways or holes that will open up new areas of the ship for you to explore. You can even find yourself backtracking on accident, only to realize that you just made yourself a shortcut to the save point, which is absolutely beautiful. There's a moment where you see a doorway you need to go to, but it's locked from one side, so you need to go below the room and parkour through a hole in the floor. I love this level design. It's super well thought out, and the ship's not too big that you'll end up getting helplessly lost. The only real problem is that the world is incredibly short. Like, there's almost nothing to this world outside of finding a way out of the ship, and that's a bit disheartening. What if they managed to make this a minor part to a much bigger Neverland that you get to explore? Oh, that would have been phenomenal. Like you're exploring Mermaid Lagoon or Skull Rock, and then you get captured by Hook, and you have to bust your way out, and then... sorry, I may be enjoying this just a little too much. Regardless of what they didn't do, what they did do was amazing, and I really enjoyed exploring the ship, despite how small it is.
On top of that, the whole time you're exploring the ship, you're being taunted by a shadow version of Sora that keeps floating around the room, not doing a whole lot.
Could you imagine having a shadow version of yourself that just constantly taunts you wherever you go?
You'll never have hair again.
Did y'all hear something?
Your video game opinions are garbage.
I swear I'm hearing something.
Breath of the Wild is better than any other Zelda game.
Okay, now whatever I'm hearing is just straight up lying.
According to all known laws of aviation,
This Shadow Sora is just a lead up to the battle with him, and oh my lord, this fight! I don't know what it is about this fight. Perhaps the fact that we're fighting in the room the size of a closet and the camera keeps getting stuck on everything. Or maybe it's the fact he keeps spawning copies of himself. Or maybe it's the fact that I keep whiffing my attacks! I swear he is literally walking and I keep missing my attacks. It's so frustrating. This fight is fantastic conceptually, but it's quite the pain to actually do the fight.
I love it.
Alright, so it's frustrating, sure, but the skill you need in order to not get caught in his stupid attacks is one of my favorite things about this fight. Clones? Better find the real one quick using their HP bars and start smacking him around before they start smacking you around. Is he doing the stupid uppercut attack thing over and over again? Time it out and dodge roll before he gets the jump on you. It's a battle of managing your health and keeping up with the pace of his attacks. It's a pretty solid fight, and despite how frustrating it is on your first encounter, I look forward to it on repeat playthroughs. After that battle, Sora is put into a sticky situation where he's forced to walk the plank. But with this being Neverland, Sora was able to fly, which in turn—
Sora can fly?
Yeah.
How?
Well, he had to think happy thoughts.
Happy thoughts? Well, I can do that. Well, I'm gonna go try right now.
No, wait. There's much more to it than just that. Oh, no.
Okay. Okay. Happy thoughts. Happy thoughts. Paper Mario Origami King is the best Paper Mario, no matter what anyone else says.
So, along with pixie dust, Sora was able to fly. And flying in this game works exactly like swimming does, so the transition from that world to this is perfect. But also, flying is almost not required. You can land on the ship and just do normal combat if you want, and it's pretty great that you're given that option. Flying, in turn, gives everyone the shared ability of gliding in the other worlds too, which is a good way of integrating the worlds into the mechanics smoothly, similar to the dolphin kick ability. But your new ability to fly isn't gonna stop Captain Hook from giving it his all. This battle isn't too difficult, but I'd definitely say it's the most interactive of the fights. What I mean by that is that you can harm or mess with Hook in a variety of ways, which feels very in the spirit of Peter Pan. You can use fire on him and he'll run around the ship trying to put it out. Or you can even send him flying off the edge of his ship and he'll cartoonishly jump out of the water trying to escape the crocodile that ate his hand. His bomb attack he throws is the bomb he uses against Peter Pan in the movie, and I just love how fun and goofy this fight is. It can be a little difficult if you let Hook catch you in a string of his attacks, but if you need a breather, you can always just fly away from the ship and heal yourself. What's Hook gonna do? Shoot you? Uh-oh. There is one more area after this fight that you can explore a little bit that's just Big Ben from, you know, London. Not a whole lot to do here other than get some items every in-game hour that you play, which is a super awesome idea. That and a little something extra you can find here, which we'll talk about in a bit.
But yeah, that's Neverland. It's pretty short, all things considered, but I think I can confidently say that it's my favorite Disney World. Not the best, but my favorite. What'd you think, Disney Club?
It was good.
All right, I am not using any more of that footage. I was there for 7 days, paid $8,000, and just got variations of me saying it was good. And why am I eating bread in every single shot? Did I just go to Disney World to eat bread? Well, much like I'm done with all my Disney World footage, we're also done with all the Disney Worlds. At first, it's a bit sad, but we're not quite done yet. While Neverland was my favorite Disney World, this is my favorite Kingdom Hearts world. While Hollow Bastion is definitely one of my favorite worlds in this game, and one of my favorite original Kingdom Hearts worlds, I don't think I could say it's my #1 out of every world, but I'd definitely like to know what all of your favorites are, either in this game or others. So let me know down below. Maybe I'll do a video ranking of them someday.
Hollow Bastion is just filled with so much mystique. I mean, look at this thing. It looks so cool. It's got winding tunnels, several puzzles, tons of amazing fights. Man, this world is the best. But let's break it down a bit. Hollow Bastion serves as the hub and stronghold for the evil Maleficent. She's been the one pulling the strings of all the Disney villains that have been attacking and controlling the Heartless.
Story stuff!
It's also the initial home of the main antagonist of this game, Ansem, Seeker of Darkness.
Story!
So it's safe to say that at this point in the game, we're starting to reach the climax. So the length and difficulty of this world are going to match that pace. And we'll also match that pace by jumping headfirst into the level design of, hey, wait a minute, Riku stole our Keyblade! And our friends! And Beast is here?
Alright, so I'm starting to regret saving the story for the end of the video, but as I've said before, I don't consider myself to be a good writer. I'm only good at the ha-has and the gaming. And all that to say, from this point on, world and boss-wise, a lot of this won't make sense without understanding the story. Bear with me, we're getting there.
So yeah, without a Keyblade and only a wooden toy in hand, we're made essentially useless. You know, there are a lot of games that take away your powers at the beginning, and then the whole game is you getting your powers back. I don't know of a ton of games that strip you of your powers towards the end of the game, and I really like this. It's very humbling, and also shows just how much you've grown since you were fighting those kids on the island, and I think it's a beautiful choice and direction for this point in the game. Since we can't attack, we have to rely on Beast to be the muscle for us as we try to find Riku and get our Keyblade back. This leads to an underwater facility looking area where we have to cross through a series of mazes and switches in order to find a button to let us into the front gates of Hollow Bastion. This puzzle isn't too difficult. In fact, you can just hit every first switch you see as you progress through the puzzle and it will just solve itself. But if you mess up, you'll need to put on the tiniest thinking cap to figure this one out. This is just a warm-up for what's to come. Quick side note about this area, there's a corridor back here with a switch that's unreachable. I was curious how to reach that area, did some research, and apparently it's absolutely nothing. Just there to troll idiots like me.
I think this queso is expired.
With the front gate open, we can head to find Riku, the Keyblade, and Donald and Goofy, who rejoin your party to start round 1 against Riku. Similar to how that puzzle was just the warm-up for what's to come, the same could be said about the fight with Riku. That's not to say he's easy. Riku puts up quite the fight. He's super quick, so the key to this fight is to study his moves, guard or parry his attacks accordingly, and retaliate. All of his attacks are melee-based, so you can just use that to your advantage to get some distance and heal if you need to. His health bar isn't that big, so he should go down without much of a problem.
With Riku out of the way, it's time for Puzzle City!
There are so many puzzles from this area to the next fight. Heck, just simply navigating your way all the way to the top of the castle is a puzzle in and of itself, but it's also designed in a way that it shouldn't be too difficult to figure out what to do. It's just that the puzzles are fun. The first one is found in the library outside of the room you fought Riku in. Here you'll find several bookshelves with missing books, and so you need to go around finding all the correct books to put them in the right spot. This will have you going all over the library, finding books and goodies in all sorts of locations, and once you've found all of them, this unlocks access to the upper floor of the room where you fought Riku, which then gives you access to the next puzzle, finding all the keys to the door forward. This one is pretty simple and mostly just has you using your magic in different ways to make the keys appear, but I love how those two rooms connect to each other. You could even go further down the book rabbit hole that leads to a secret room with a hidden chest, and you can't reach that chest without using gravity on it. Then that room could open up more later by pressing this switch further in the castle, and you see what I'm getting at here? I'm a huge fan of this kind of stuff in video games. It's why I play Zelda games like my life depends on it. And while the intricacies don't go that deep here, it's deep enough that I get joy from just simply doing them. Screw the reward, I want the journey!
But the castle goes even deeper and deeper, and while I could break down each individual room with a fine-tooth comb, don't ask why I have a comb, I'll save you that by saying, I like it. Hollow Bastion is cool.
After you make your way through the maze-like structure, you come face to face with Maleficent herself, floating on a rock.
The mistress of all evil is also an earthbender? I always found this fight to be a little ridiculous.
She's literally just floating around the room playing keep away. You can either use the gravity spell on her rock to make her fall immediately, or just get up there and start hitting her with the pointy bit of your keyblade. She'll try to knock you off, but you can just jump back up there. Honestly, I'd say the Heartless she spawns is more of a threat than her. The only real threatening attack she does is the one where she summons meteors. That one hurts a lot, and I'd highly recommend getting out of the way or just tanking the hits. Overall, a pretty meh fight, but that's because this is only her first phase, which makes way way more sense. Maleficent's second phase is where she takes on her dragon form, and this is a much more threatening fight. She'll stomp around, she'll engulf half the arena in fire, she'll bombard you with projectiles. This fight is not going to be easy for a first-time player, but it is so satisfying to conquer. I highly recommend the new players to use Tinkerbell here, as she's a good substitute for the dead roasted duck sitting in the corner for half of this fight. I instinctively used her since I was so used to needing her when I was a kid, but Maleficent is definitely beatable without her. Using your newly equipped glide to your disposal and learning her telegraphed attacks is super necessary to winning this fight, and what a satisfying fight it is. I always look forward to this fight, not only for the intense and engaging combat, but also for the spectacle. And then there's the cherry on top of it all, the best story fight in this game. The second fight against Riku. This fight is super tough, really intense, incredibly engaging, and oh, did I also forget to mention that Donald and Goofy aren't here to help? You are completely on your own. It's just you and buff Riku over here. This fight is infamous for being a breaking point for a lot of players. Riku does not let up here. He's got the same moves as earlier, but then a ton of new projectile and dark magic based attacks. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. On the original PS2, this is not easy in the slightest. I used every single one of my potions and I barely made it by, but I learned a lot about this fight in that attempt. First of all, Riku is extremely weak to you walking in a circle. I'm not kidding. I spent most of the fight walking counterclockwise and he would miss a lot of his attacks as long as I wasn't too close to his hitbox. You can use this to your advantage early in the fight when he's not powered up to punish him for missing. But after he loses a couple of bars of health, he starts using what's called a desperation move. A move that the bosses like to do where they're invincible and do a long chain of attacks. I believe I counted that Riku did his 15 times total, so you can see why I needed all those potions. By the time he was done and I tried to land another hit on him, he would just start up his desperation move again. I ended up wasting most of my potions and magic just tanking all the damage, until I realized his other weakness, your special ability attacks. I don't know why I didn't try this, but as soon as I got Sonic Blade and used it on him, it was over. So my other piece of advice, definitely go into the fight ready to use those as much as possible. This fight is extremely difficult, but with some practice, it can easily be mastered. It's fun, intense, strategic. Every element highlights the best of the first Kingdom Hearts battle system and cranks it to 11. Timing your dodge rolls and gliding to avoid DM attacks. Perfecting your guards and movement to punish his attacks. Getting yourself in the best position to maximize your damage output. I love this fight, and I'm glad that something like this in the game exists as not only a fun and engaging fight, but also a really nice callback to when Riku was kicking my butt on the beach at the beginning of the game! With Maleficent and Riku defeated, there's still the matter of Ansem to deal with, but he's nowhere to be seen, and the Heartless are spawning all over Hollow Bastion. Sora and the gang retreat back to Traverse Town to hatch a plan before coming back to find Ansem in the keyhole to Hollow Bastion.
I bring this up because this is the game's way of making you go through the entirety of Hollow Bastion again!
But Club, you just said you liked Hollow Bastion. Why are you complaining? You get to do it again.
Boy, I sure did enjoy that puzzle. But I'm glad that I finally got to complete it.
That's like them teleporting you away from a boss door after you fought your way to get there. It's super annoying. It's not like I get to do cool fights or new puzzles or anything. I just literally have to walk all the way back to where it was. I know that the main reason they did it was for the story, but it's super frustrating, and it doesn't get any better when you get to the top and realize that the boss is just a really dumb fight against a Heartless called a behemoth. Get up on his head and smack its horn until it dies. Is it charging? Step off and away, and then get back up and repeat. Ugh, what a joke of a fight to have after that amazing fight with Riku.
Regardless of that, Hollow Bastion still stands as my favorite world in this game. All the different areas you can explore, the super brutal fights, and just the atmosphere and the music. Oh my gosh, the music is so good! I wish I could play it so bad! Just mwah! Beautiful. I love Hollow Bastion. But alas, Ansem is not here. And that's because he's making his final stand at the...
a gathering place of all worlds that have fallen to darkness, a place of sadness, turmoil, suffering, and grim reminders. With every fallen world comes a very many people that have been taken by the Heartless, and this world is, by its very nature, a byproduct of the Heartless's destructive nature. This is darkness incarnate. This is the end of the world. family-friendly Disney kids game, remember?
Pretty typical for Square Enix to make the final push of one of their RPGs to be this over-the-top, horrifyingly dreary, difficult, and sometimes grotesque and miserable place.
All right, I arrived at the end of the world. How bad can it... Oh,
Shouldn't surprise anyone, but End of the World fits that to a T. Maybe even hitting it a little harder on the nose with a name like that. You spend most of this world shambling your way towards the inevitable end of the game. The first area contains a ton of treasure that will help you with the final fight, but the catch is that the entire room is an invisible maze with traps either in the chest or near them that throw you into fights with some much tougher Heartless. It's possible to avoid some of these fights, but it's highly recommended that you do them, not only for the EXP, but for the treasure alone. I always enjoyed this area. It sets the starting mood and atmosphere of this world perfectly, and the invisible maze adds to the confusing nature for not only Sora, Donald, and Goofy, but also to us, the player, that can't figure out how to get around this stupid wall. Getting through this area leads you to a pretty odd room that asks you to drop down to another room. That's it. It has 0 enemies in it and a ton of treasure chests that are mostly useless items. This room just kind of baffles me. Its inclusion does nothing gameplay-wise nor story-wise. I guess you could argue that it adds to the atmosphere, but yeah. Anyways, after that comes a bunch of better additions to the buildup of the finale. You're presented with a bunch of teleporters that will take you to specific areas in all the worlds you've visited so far, to fight Heartless and gain more treasure to help you for the end. This makes for another great reminder to how far you've gotten, and how much you've seen and experienced up until this point, not only for Sora, but also for you, the player. The desolate, non-populated versions of these worlds also make for a stark reminder that if it wasn't for you, these worlds too would have fallen to darkness. Each of these teleporters are completely optional, but I would, yet again, recommend it, since you're going to need all the experience and items you can get for the first battle you come across. Chernabog? For those of you unaware of who Chernabog is, I'm not surprised. He showed up once in the Night on Bald Mountain part of the movie Fantasia, an experimental art movie Disney made about animation set to live orchestral music. So his inclusion here in the End of the World is so boggling, yet so incredibly cool at the same time. Chernabog is based on the god of night in Slavic mythology, and described as Satan in the movie, who summons minions to dance for him before being thrown into a fiery pit. Which, now that I've said that out loud, sounds like the perfect fit for the end of a Square Enix game. This fight is pretty intense. You spend the entirety of the fight flying, trying your best to fight this larger-than-life demon while Night on Bald Mountain is blaring in the background. What a fantastical set piece. Unfortunately, as much of a spectacle this is, the fight is made a little easy by the fact that you can just get behind his head and most of his attacks will miss, with the exception of his giant flame wall attack, which can either be avoided by reading his movements or you can tank it with arrow equipped. It's a little disheartening because of how cool the inclusion of this super niche Disney villain is, but I assume they didn't want to make him too hard since everything following this just gets harder and harder. However, for completing the fight, you get an amazing upgrade to your glide ability that allows you to glide faster, which may or may not come in handy for these next fights depending on your playstyle. But immediately after that fight is one of the hardest Heartless mob fights in the game, especially if you come ill prepared. It's here where you'll have to fight what seems like countless waves after countless—
8. There are 8 waves. Not that many.
Alright, well it certainly felt like a lot when I was a kid, and I specifically remember watching one of my friends struggle with this fight, because if you go in under-leveled or without items, it really will feel like the waves of enemies are never ending. It quite honestly is a fantastic test of strength for players, because immediately after this is the point of no return.
There are a lot of games that have these moments where they tell the player that there's no going back, and if you cross this threshold unprepared, that you'll have to redo the whole thing. And every time I come across one of those, this is what I think of.
This room has been etched into my mind, a room that gave Child Club immense fear. Crossing through this door meant I was up for a real challenge, and that the game I was having so much fun with was coming to an end. Stepping through that door presents you with the arena for the first of many battles, the broken remains of Destiny Islands, a twisted and wicked setting to have our characters fight in, but a spark that ignites Sora and the player's rage at the person who caused all of this, Ansem, Seeker of Darkness.
Strap in, everyone, for a massive 11-phase fight. Whew. Alright.
Phase 1 is Ansem versus Sora, Donald, and Goofy. This phase is but a taste of what Ansem has up his sleeve and serves as a way of getting you comfortable with his patterns. Ansem's got a funny little dude called the Guardian and—
is totally not anyone from the other Kingdom Hearts games.
No, I was going to say that the Guardian serves as Ansem's main weapon and means of attacking. This fight isn't too difficult, but serves as a good introduction to how Ansem fights, especially his attacks where the Guardian possesses you. That attack alone is worth memorizing and making sure you don't forget, because it will quite literally come back to haunt you.
Got it memorized?
After you knock Ansem down a peg, Sora, Donald, and Goofy get separated, and it's time for the return of our good buddy Darkseid. Here yet again to show the player how much they've improved. Seriously, that's about all he does. His battle hasn't really changed in any way, so his inclusion conclusion to this onslaught of battles leads me to believe that they wanted the player to see how much better they got, both strategy-wise and ability-wise, but it also could just be a means of draining your resources as well.
I definitely don't disapprove of him being here. I just think they could have spiced him up just a little bit more by giving him a few new moves or something like that. But after that fight comes my second favorite fight in this entire game.
Sora versus Ansem. This fight will test everything you've learned so far. Your movement, your pacing, your timing, your power, everything will be put on full display, and you can't let up for a second. You have to be completely ready for everything he does. He only has about 5 different attacks, and they can be easily countered or avoided if you pay close enough attention, but you have to be light on your feet and quick to respond. I absolutely love this fight. It's not as memorable or as fast as the Sora versus Riku fight, but it's pretty up there with the best story fights in this game. But after taking him down another peg, Ansem transforms into this super grotesque and weird looking ship thing.
Everyone just kind of calls him Boat Ansem or Ship Ansem or something like that, but his god-given name is World of Chaos.
Ship Ansem sucks. You do the entire fight flying, so it makes the fight incredibly annoying to deal with since you can't use any of your better abilities in the air. His first phase is done solo, making it just a little bit harder to deal with him. Most of his attacks have him sending lasers at you, which are super easy to know when they're coming, but he uses them so frequently if you try to avoid every single one, you'd barely have any time to actually attack Ansem, which is why I usually opted to equip Arrow and just tank all the hits and smack him repeatedly. Makes for a very meh experience since it's not as engaging as the other battles. It practically forces me to button mash. Most of Ship Ansem takes up the rest of the fights for the finale here, with you slowly breaking down the ship piece by piece and getting Donald and Goofy back. The only real battle with the ship that's worth noting is the battle against the face on the front of the ship. It uses a lot of magic-based attacks that hit hard, but a little easier to sidestep compared to Ansem's lasers.
I'm sure there are better ways to take down these fights, but they just don't feel nearly as good as the fights against people your size. I feel like the biggest hindrance that's holding back these fights is the inability to use your full range of motion.
Part of what makes the fights with regular Ansem or Riku good is the fact that you feel equal to them in a way. Their wild movement and abilities can be matched with your equally as wild movements and abilities. It makes for a sort of dance, if you will, dance of power. And from an outsider looking in, it's like you're watching an anime fight happening with all these intense moves, spells, and abilities. But when you're doing it yourself and inputting the inputs into the controller, you're choreographing that. You are. And it feels, well, cool. It feels fun. And that's something that I don't think they had perfected yet in this game, but they were definitely leaning in the right direction. But then you have fights like this against the face and Ship Ansem, and that just doesn't feel nearly as good. I could be wrong, and it could just be the way the fights are made, but to me, they don't make me feel powerful or strategic for figuring out their tricks. They make me feel annoyed. And the last phase is just the first phase of Ship Ansem, except now he can drain your MP or push you away or whatever. They basically give him a whole lot more attacks and way less time to hit him, which is fine. It's the final fight, but
I know what the future holds when it comes to final bosses in Kingdom Hearts, and I'm having an extremely hard time not thinking of those when I think about this fight. While not the worst finale in a Kingdom Hearts game, it might honestly be my least favorite. Final boss wise, don't think for a second that I don't like the end to this game. Which, speaking of,
we did it! We beat Kingdom Hearts and talked about just about everything. Everything except... Wait, what? What do you mean I forgot something besides in-game content? I just spent who knows how many minutes and or hours talking about everything in this game. What could I have possibly forgot? Oh. Right.
Oops, I forgot. Ugh, I mean, could you blame me? The way you get from world to world looks like this.
Isn't this just so much fun? This isn't fair. This is at the beginning of the game. How about this? A little bit more fun looking, right? The Gummi Ship has been a very mixed bag for a lot of people, but I think everyone can unanimously say that the Gummi Ship in this game equates to...
Are we there yet? No. All right, wake me up when we get there.
Yeah, it's a little on the boring side, but that's where you gotta make your fun. But first, what is the Gummi Ship, and what do you do? Well, lore-wise, the Gummi Ship is a ship constructed of blocks that are the remains of the walls that used to protect each of the individual worlds. Mickey had one constructed for Disney Castle, and Sora, Donald, and Goofy use it to traverse to all the different worlds. Gameplay-wise, it's a rail shooter, and a pretty lame one at that. Every time you need to travel to a new world, you first have to physically travel from one world to another via a rail shooter minigame, and about 90% of these can be beaten without even pressing the fire button. They just aren't engaging enough for me to enjoy them, and I tried my absolute hardest. You see, when you do choose to participate in fighting off all the other ships, you're given items, but these items are different gummy blocks for you to build out your ship more. Now this is something I enjoyed about the Gummi Ship section of the game, putting together a stupid looking ship a la Minecraft style. No matter how many upgrades you equip or blocks you add, this little minigame just doesn't deserve the amount of effort it takes to build a ship, and it really doesn't take a whole lot of effort. Nevertheless, I tried, and my ship started like this and ended like this. It's honestly kind of funny how well just putting a bunch of random pieces on your pre-existing ship works. But destroying those enemies isn't the only way you get more gummy pieces. They are littered throughout the game to an almost annoying degree. The only time I was excited was when I doused all these flames in Olympus Coliseum and got the fastest engine for the Gummi Ship on the third world in the game. Having something that fast early on makes these a little bit more tolerable, but half the time, your hopes and dreams of getting a cool accessory or something are completely cut short by getting another stupid gummy block. Heck, that entire area and end of the world I was talking about that had useless treasure, all mostly gummy pieces. Like, why? I beat the game. Why would I ever need to fly this Gummi Ship ever again? Because that's the thing. About a fourth into the game, you're given the ability to warp to a world you've already visited, completely negating the reason to normally fly to another world again.
While the Gummi Ship kinda sucks in this game, I can't be too mad at it, because if it wasn't for it, we wouldn't have gotten the gummy missions in future games. But if I'm looking at this game and this game alone, the Gummi Ship is by far the weakest element of this game. Alright, I've said my piece. Now it's time to talk about in-game content for real this time. Kingdom Hearts is filled with a ton of collectibles and minigames and fights and so much more, a lot of which is optional, thus I left it out of my analysis and descriptions of the world. So breaking it down even further, let's discuss Jiminy's journal.
Jiminy Cricket from Pinocchio also joins you on your journey and serves as the group's, well, journalist, for lack of a better word. He's your go-to for keeping up with everything you've seen or done in the game. You can get better descriptions on characters, such as their motivations and where they originated from. You can get an updated look at the story so you never forget what happened last time you played. But more importantly, and the subject of what we're talking about, he'll keep track of all the superfluous things in the game. For starters, Trinities. Trinities are these emblems that you'll see in various spots throughout the game that Sora, Donald, and Goofy can interact with to give you items like money, potions, gummy blocks, or even sometimes keyblades. They also have to be used sometimes to open up new areas required to finish the game, so some are unavoidable, which you think would be a problem, but they actually make for a great indicator for where you haven't been yet. What the real problem is that you have to have Sora, Donald, and Goofy and no other party member in your party. Meaning if you come across one while another Disney character is in your party, you're just straight out of luck. This swayed me even harder into never putting another Disney character in my party, since you could only switch party members at save points. Either a pretty big oversight or a stupid and annoying decision in my opinion. But what did these different colored trinities mean? Well, not a whole lot other than what your party members will do to interact with it. Blue is jumping, red is charging, yellow is pushing, green is ladder, and white is unity.
Guys, what does that mean?
Well, I don't know. Let's activate and find out.
But we've never seen that one before. What if it does something bad? Okay.
Guys?
Dalmatians! I know a lot of you were wanting to know when I was going to talk about these little guys, because they are the quintessential collectible for this game. After your first boss in Traverse Town, Leon points out that the Dalmatians, Pongo and Perdita, have 99 of their puppies scattered across the world, and they need our help to find them. And can I just point out how adorable it is that Leon is concerned about the puppies, that he points it out to us on multiple occasions? He even seems embarrassed to ask at some points. I love him. Anyways, so throughout the game, you'll be finding these precious pups in chests in many different worlds. And every tennis you find and bring back home, you'll be rewarded with some pretty amazing goodies. The first few are gummy blocks, but you get them early on, and they're actually some of the better gummy blocks. So if you're into designing and upgrading your ship, you'll be pretty happy about that. But all the other ones are powerful items or accessories, or even straight up magic. Like, why is this dog carrying the power of wind and an entire Gummi Ship set collection? Where did you find these, pup? But yeah, I like doing the Dalmatian hunting. It never felt bad when I found another in a chest like some of these other items did. What does feel bad, however, here is the mini-games. Not counting the Gummi Ship, there are 7 mini-games in the game, 2 of which are the vine swinging and jungle slider in Deep Jungle. Vine swinging does nothing to add anything to the pre-existing swinging you had to do to travel in Deep Jungle, but the jungle slider does have a bit of depth, albeit a very slight amount. As you go through the course, you'll need to collect 10 fruit. Doing so unlocks a new course, but you can't simply select the course. Nope, you have to go through all of course 1 again and make sure to choose the correct branching path at the end of the course, and then that takes you to course 2. But if you want to go to course 3, you'll have to collect all of the fruit from course 1 and 2, and then go back and do it again, and so on until you get to course 5. This sucks. It's not hard at all. In fact, it's pretty easy to get all the fruit, but it's just so boring. They reward you with some pretty awesome items for completing all these courses, like stat upgrades, but if it wasn't for those items and the fact that you have to do it to platinum the game, I would say to just stay away from it because it's barely any fun to do. Now, I'll give you one hint to where the other mini-games are.
Pooh Bear.
Yeah, there's actually one other Disney World that I never talked about, the 100-Acre Wood.
Winnie the Pooh has always had a super soft spot in my heart as a kid, and now. It just makes me feel all nice and cozy. I love that silly old bear.
And this world does an amazing job of capturing that cozy feeling. I just love being in this world and just taking in the environment. And true to the movie and story, Pooh's world takes place inside of a book, but sadly, his book is missing a few pages, and thus, Pooh is missing a few of his friends in the process. So we have to help good old Pooh Bear by finding his scattered pages throughout all the world, similar to how we find all the Dalmatians. Finding a missing page will progress Pooh's story a little further and add a new minigame for you to do.
You see, the 100-Acre Wood is completely optional, only serving as a fun side activity to hang out with Pooh and do minigames. You'll get rewarded, of course, for completing the minigames, but simply being here was always reward enough for me, just because of how much I love Winnie the Pooh. But when it came to actually playing the minigames in here, well, actually, you know what? Let's give Disney Club one last shot. Disney Club, what did you think about the Winnie the Pooh world?
So, Winnie the Pooh and Kingdom Hearts, I honestly love it. Winnie the Pooh is one of my favorite franchises, and it's just so cozy, and I love it just being there. But honestly, the mini games, they kind of suck. There's 5 of them, right? There's one where you're climbing up a honey tree, and it's all right, but the platforming sucks. And then there's one where you're like on a swing set or something, and it's really short and lame. And then there's one where you're stopping Tigger from bouncing on carrots, and it doesn't control well. Then there's one where you're like bouncing with Tigger and you're trying to hit nuts or something. And then the last one where you're trying to coerce Pooh to like go up this platform to find all his friends, and he keeps falling off, and it's just cumbersome and annoying and really not fun. I know that in future Kingdom Hearts games that they get better, and I guess I was thinking of that when I was playing this, but these games just aren't fun. I mean, there's not very many mini games in Kingdom Hearts as it is, but in Pooh specifically, they're really not good. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. No, that answered my question. Why did I go so hard on that of all things, but nothing else? Oh, anyways, yes, so the minigames here, they aren't that much fun.
As Disney Club said, there's very little here that I actually thoroughly enjoy, and it makes it even harder for me to enjoy since I know what minigames there will be in future Kingdom Hearts games. I really think that the only one here that I kinda enjoyed was the blocking Tigger minigame, but it controls so weird and feels kind of clunky to get the hang of, especially since you need a very specific score on this and the other minigames in order to get the cheer ability for Sora, which amplifies your summon's power. Something I didn't want, but I got anyway, cause why not? You do get this really sweet cutscene with Pooh and Sora at the end if you do all the mini-games, and the rewards you get, either from completing the mini-games or from finding items in the different areas, definitely makes it worth it to visit Pooh and friends. Just wish the mini-games were a little bit more fun to play and engage with.
But yeah, I wish I could have left Pooh on a much happier note. It's safe to say that I don't think they did a very good job with the mini-games here as a whole. In fact, it's almost worth just skipping completely. But there is technically one other kind of minigame. However, I would call it more of a battle tournament than a minigame.
The Cups at Olympus Coliseum. I told you I'd come back to this. Throughout the game, after your first visit to Olympus Coliseum, good old goat boy Danny DeVito will allow you to enter into different matches against rounds of Heartless and boss fights that will rack up in difficulty and length the further up you go. We got the 9-round Phil Cup, the 9-round Pegasus Cup, the 9-round Hercules Cup, and the 49-round Hades Cup. And each of these will need to be completed it 3 times if you want to get everything the game has to offer. Or if you're an idiot, the first time you do it, you'll have Donald and Goofy by your side. The second time, you'll do it alone, and the third time, you'll get your buddies back, but you're on a time limit. And if you decide to do these when you unlock them, they should be pretty challenging. But if you decide to do them when I did them, i.e. after you've already beaten the game, then there's not going to be a single round that you'll have a problem with. They even throw in rematches against bosses you've already fought, like Guard Armor and Stealth Sneak, and they don't last any time at all before I put them 6 feet under. I think what's really worth noting here is the inclusion of fights against Yuffie, Leon, and Cloud. I love that they give you an opportunity to not only get a rematch against a beefed up Leon, but to also take your chance against Yuffie. And most of the time you fight them, you'll be fighting them paired up with someone else, which means you'll need to be mindful of your surroundings as you're beating the crap out of Leon in the corner. But overall, these fights are not difficult at all, especially if you do them at the very end of the game like I did. There are a couple of other fights thrown in here that are worth noting as well. In the Hercules Cup, you get to go up against the man himself, and you may be wondering, how do you take down a god? With barrels, apparently.
I am an all-powerful god with an endless amount of immortality. I sure hope that nobody hits me with these anti-immortality bottles that I keep laying out.
They couldn't have thought of anything else, could they? Such a dumb little fight. You just run around throwing barrels at him and smacking him around till he KOs. It just feels incredibly silly. What doesn't feel as silly is the fight against Hades in the Hades Cup. I wouldn't particularly say it's hard, but it definitely requires a bit more finesse than any of these other fights you've had to do in these cups. It's really just this wall of flame attack he does where you need to run at a quick enough speed to not get hit by it. But other than that, the rest of the fight kind of plays out like any of the other fights. What's strange to me is that Hades isn't the final fight in his own cup. I know, right? Seems a bit odd. It definitely makes sense that Hades would send in Rock Titan as his champion, with it being a Titan and all, but he should maybe reconsider with how embarrassingly easy it is to take him down. You literally break his shins, jump up on his body, and smash his head into rubble until he dies. This is your champion? I went through 49 battles to fight this? He even gives me tech points with every hit. This guy is a joke. But your reward for doing it 3 times is pretty sweet, if not just a little bit unnecessary at the end of the game. You get a Trinity Limit ability. That's a screen-wide AoE attack that you can do with Donald and Goofy, and then you get the best weapons for them as the other prizes. Pretty sweet, all things considered. And for completing the Hercules Cup, you get 2 things actually. The first is the ability to use the Yellow Trinity, and the second is behind the thing you have to use the Yellow Trinity on, the keyhole to Olympus Coliseum. Yep, in order to find the keyhole that Sora has been looking for in every world, you have to make it through the Hercules Cup. It makes sense based on how this world had been set up, but as a kid, I had no idea that that's where it was. And I guess on all my old save files, I just left this world to succumb to darkness.
But Danny DeVito's got a few more little goodies for us. It wouldn't be a Square Enix game without some super bosses.
Hidden behind the gold match is a one-on-one fight against the Ice Titan. I love this fight. This fight breaks all the norms of the other fights and has you battling the Ice Titan in a very unique way. Throughout the entire battle, he'll be throwing ice projectiles at you, and you need to block and parry these at the right time to have them fly back at his head. Do this enough times and he'll fall over so you can start wailing on him. This is so well made because it forces you to take the fight at a much more defensive pace. He'll be throwing an onslaught of several different attacks, and you have to be ducking and weaving through all of them while making sure to block the right attacks to bring this Titan down. All that, and you can't have arrow equipped because it will make the ice projectiles impossible to deflect back. What a super awesome fight. I love it. But nothing compares to the Platinum matchup against the man himself, Sephiroth. Oh my goodness, Sephiroth.
Kingdom Hearts was my first exposure to Sephiroth, but it sure did an amazing job at putting the fear of God in me every time I see this man.
This is by far the hardest fight in the original game, and you will be using every tool at your disposal to take him down. He has way too many attacks for me to break them all down, but the best advice I can give is practice, practice, practice. If you're at a high enough level, it'll certainly make it easier, but Sephiroth does not pull any punches. He's fast, he has long combos, and he has attacks that'll completely drain your health and magic to 0 if you don't react fast enough. My go-to strategy was to abuse Sonic Blade and carry a ton of elixirs. With enough patience, arrow, and practice, you can easily take down this incredibly fun and satisfying fight. But you know what you get for beating both of these incredibly fun and terribly difficult fights on the original PS2 version?
Oh boy, what is it? It's empty.
No, it's not.
Yay.
But there are actually two other super bosses located in other worlds. The first one is located at Big Ben in Neverland, and it's the fight against the ominous-looking Phantom. Similar to the Ice Titan, this fight has you fighting in a completely unique way. I hope you've been focusing on your magic-based combat and not putting everything into a strength build, because you're going to need a lot of magic here.
Uh-oh.
Not to fret, you can actually equip a ton of accessories and a different keyblade that will make fighting this thing a cinch. There are actually two gimmicks to the Phantom fight. The first is he weaponizes Big Ben by turning it into a death clock. He'll slowly count down, and when it hits 0, one of your party members will be permanently removed from the fight, which isn't a big deal since they weren't doing much of anything anyways. It'll be a bigger problem when it gets to you. You can halt the death clock by simply casting stop on Big Ben about every minute or so. It completely halts the timer, and you can continue the fight while you wait for the spell to end. The other gimmick is that you can only attack him based on the color of his heart at the bottom of his cloak. Red for fire, blue for ice, yellow for lightning, and white for melee. The only real attack he does that could kill you is the one where he goes to the front of Big Ben and fires a projectile at you, but you can just simply get on the other side of Big Ben and the projectile will never reach you. This fight is honestly super satisfying to pull off. It feels like one of those overcooked games where you have to manage a lot of things at once, but once you get the rhythm down, this fight is super easy, all things considered.
It's so funny to think of how simple this fight is, because as a kid, the Phantom terrified me because I had no idea he was there and I just accidentally came across him. And nowadays, I always look forward to fighting him because of how satisfying it is to pull off.
Defeating the Phantom rewards you with an upgrade to your stop ability. Fitting.
And now we have one more secret boss fight in the original game, but it has a little bit more of a backstory to it. 2 months before the American release of Kingdom Hearts, a contest called Name in a Game was held to have your name as one of the bosses in the American release of Kingdom Hearts. That winner was a guy in New York named Kurt Ziza.
And I'm so glad that this thing was named Kurt Ziza instead of something like Little Johnny Robertson or something like, I don't know, Caleb. That'd be stupid.
But before we talk about that, it's also worth noting that I said the American release, which does mean yes, this boss, along with Ice Titan, Sephiroth, and the Expert difficulty, were not in the Japanese release of Kingdom Hearts, which I find interesting that they decided to give us all those cool things instead of Japan. But I guess it didn't really matter since Japan wasn't far away from getting all that and more in an upcoming release. But enough about all that. Kurt Ziza!
Kurt Ziza can be found in Agrabah and is a much more intense and harder fight than the fight against Phantom. Similar to the other super bosses, Kurt Ziza has some gimmicks up his sleeve. He has 2 different stages that he'll alternate between. During his first one, he'll completely lock off all your magic abilities and force you to only use your weapon.
Well, that's fine with me. I was using a strength build anyway.
That means no arrow or curing. Yep, you can only rely on items to keep you up, and that makes for a fight you have to really pay attention to. To knock him out of this stage, you'll have to break the 2 orbs he's holding, which graciously drops HP orbs when you break them. Breaking both of them stunts him temporarily for you to give him as much blunt force trauma as you can muster before he switches to his next stage. In this stage, he forms a giant bubble around him, and now you can only use magic against him.
Oh sweet, well now I can use arrow and cure.
Right, but now you can't use your strength build. I love this design. It's such a cool idea for a boss fight, and it works well. Even hitting the bubble he's inside of here gives you MP orbs, which is such a nice touch at making the fight as fair as possible without draining your resources. These different stages come with different attacks too. When you're supposed to be using your strength-based attacks, he's using strength-based attacks, and the same goes for his magic stage as well. This boss, in my opinion, is the most clever and well put together boss in this game. I spent most of the fight oohing and awing at the good gameplay design, so it's safe to say that this is my favorite boss from a technical standpoint.
But what if we made those bosses just a little bit easier with some extra special items? Some special items and accessories that can only be made by our good friends, the Moogles, Kupo.
Synthesizing, baby! Along with all the other items you've gotten throughout the game, you could also come across items that you could synthesize. If you visit the Moogles in Traverse Town and give them a bunch of different items you found, you can make some of the best gear in the game to give you the best stats imaginable. A lot of the items can be found throughout the mini worlds in different chests, but most of them are going to be found in enemy drops.
Great. RNG, my favorite. Now, Kingdom Hearts does have a few abilities to help mitigate this, and thankfully I have my handy strategy guide to tell me where to find all of them. But I still hate having to grind for something that I have to rely on luck for.
In the original PS2 version, I actually didn't have a ton of grinding to do outside of a couple of Heartless. By the time I got to the end of the game, I was only missing a few items necessary to make mostly everything there was to synthesize. So I was almost immediately ready to craft the greatest Keyblade in the game, the Ultima weapon. What a beautiful looking weapon with an insane reach and even more insane stat count. Bit of a shame you get it so late in the game that it's practically pointless, but hey, it looks awesome, right? Outside of grinding for the Ultima weapon, I also needed materials from these fun little guys called white mushrooms. There are specific rooms where these guys will show up and not attack you at all. It's super weird at first, and then you see them do a funny little dance or movement. Those funny little movements are them asking you to use specific magic on them. Do it 3 times in a row, and they'll reward you with a synthesis item based on the last magic you used on them. Sometimes dropping an item called mystery goo, which was required for some of the synthesizing, but not too many of them, only needing 5. The last thing they can drop are called arts, which they will drop if you use the same exact spell on them 3 times in a row. Obtaining every art gives you access to Goofy's Dream Shield, and
it's worth noting that while something like this is completely superfluous, I still did it. I did everything. Everything that mattered, at least. It wasn't like I was going out of my way to get every Gummi Ship blueprint.
But you better believe that I got every weapon, every journal entry, every accessory, won every fight, synthesized every item. I did everything I could for 2 reasons. 1, because I feel like to give this game the most fair chance I can, and to thoroughly review it, I need to experience everything the game has to offer. Even if some people may never see something, like the cutscene that plays when you beat Sephiroth and then Cloud comes out and starts battling him and it's the coolest thing ever, and what I'm saying is, I want to put in enough effort into not only the video quality, but the reviewing process as well, so that you all come away with the feeling of, wow, this idiot did everything. I guess he kind of knows what he's talking about if he's stupid enough to do it all. That, and then the second reason, I have a weird fascination with getting platinum trophies and achievements.
Wow, I feel nothing.
The trophies do nothing for me other than make the neurons in my brain fire every time the platinum number goes up 1 more number, but I still like to get them nonetheless.
So what I'm getting at is that it's safe to say that I not only did everything on the PS2 version, but I also stupidly did everything on the Final Mix version. Yes, it's finally time to talk about the Final Mix version. Releasing on December 26, 2002 in Japan on the PS2, and then releasing as Kingdom Hearts 1.5 Final Mix in Japan on March 14, 2013, and then worldwide by September of the same year, Kingdom Hearts Final Mix was the original Kingdom Hearts game with a ton of new additions and changes. So, let's break that down even further. Over the years, Kingdom Hearts has seen quite a few Final Mix versions of games, whether that's from retellings or DLC or just straight up Final Mixes. And while those future ones added an unimaginable amount of content to already pretty dense games, the first Kingdom Hearts Final Mix didn't have nearly as much. And like I said at the top of the video, I do have the original Kingdom Hearts Final Mix, but I opted to play the American release titled 1.5 Final Mix, which is mostly the same with a couple of quality of life improvements they added to make the game the best it could be. But before we talk about those, 1.5 Final Mix had a few development hiccups.
Apparently they had to have a lot of its assets rebuilt since most of the assets from the original game had gone missing. It's commonly thought that they had to completely remake the entire game, but it's believed by most, and I'm also in this camp, that they just had to rebuild textures since they were able to pull some and or most of the assets out of the pre-existing game. This led to them also experimenting with different models to use in the game, like the model of Ansem Seeker of Darkness, which now uses the model from Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance. But along with those asset upgrades, we also got a huge improvement to the music. Almost every track in the original game had been completely reorchestrated with live instruments, making for an extremely night and day difference between the music used in the games.
You can tell as soon as you get in the game, and I bless Yoko Shimomura for gracing us with some of the best sounding music in gaming history. Thank you, Shimomura-sensei, for blessing my ears with this wonderful soundtrack. Amen.
But what about those quality of life improvements? Well, 1.5 Final Mix finally made it possible to use the right analog stick to control the camera like how most modern games were at that time, making it way more accessible for first-time players. Although playing the original and then this version back-to-back actually made it harder for me to get used to it since I had gotten so used to using the triggers, but that was more of a me problem than a problem I think anyone else would actually have on their first time playing. But since they fixed the camera controls,
maybe they fixed the actual camera. Oh, I guess not. Well, it is what it is. I can't ask them to overhaul the entire camera system, otherwise it probably would have vastly changed the overall game.
But there are more quality of life improvements outside of that, like letting you use the triangle button to talk to people and examine things instead of using the command menu, which in turn allows them to move summons to the bottom of the command menu instead of hiding it in the magic section. A much better way to organize the controls and make interacting with the world a lot more intuitive. This did lead to a little bit of weirdness with the timing of special abilities like Sonic Blade. Since the triangle button prompt has an animation, it would usually throw off my timing for the attack and caused me to drop it. But after some practice, I got the hang of it pretty quickly, and it didn't really persist as a problem. In addition to those changes, there's the obvious inclusion of HD textures and graphics, but also the addition of the game running at 60 frames per second on the PS4 version of the game. Something I definitely didn't expect, but I'm really happy to see here, since I think that it makes a game with a combat style similar to Kingdom Hearts easier on the eyes, helping the player to make quicker responses in the heat of battle.
Now, I've said it before in a previous video, and I'll say it again here. A lot of people have mixed feelings on 60 FPS and its inclusion in videos and video games, but I always found it more appealing on the eyes, if, and only if, it was originally designed that way. And I say that to all my fellow animating friends out there, or people that like to AI upscale stuff. Heck, this video is running at 60 FPS if you hadn't noticed, but that's just a small side tangent. That's everything that was added in 1.5 Final Mix, so now let's talk about everything that was in the original release.
First, there were a few quality of life improvements in this version of the game, like journal notifications, being able to freely move your cursor on the world map, and bug fixes like the Red Trinity at Oogie Manor. But when it comes to some of the bigger stuff, we absolutely need to start with the addition of new accessories, weapons, and of course new keyblades, which are used as rewards for some of the super bosses that didn't originally have rewards, like Sephiroth and the Ice Titan. But on top of adding keyblades, they also tweaked with a lot of the settings, but in a very odd way. If you remember way earlier on, I was talking about there being instances where you'll get several keyblades right after the other, negating the previous ones. Well, I was referring to the keyblades Oathkeeper, Divine Rose, and Oblivion, with you getting all three of these within an hour of gameplay if you know where they are. Oblivion was the go-to for strength builds in the original game, which seemed fitting since Oblivion kind of became a staple in the Kingdom Hearts series. But in Final Mix, for some reason they gave the Divine Rose a huge buff to its strength, completely negating the use of Oblivion. It's not a huge deal in the grand scheme of things, but it just seems like such an odd choice to me. They also added a plethora of new abilities, so many in fact it would take forever to go through all of them. But if I was to talk about three, the first would be Slapshot, a wonderful new addition to this game that makes the combat of the original game look way slower in comparison to this version. It's essentially a quick attack that Sora could do to an enemy that's close to him, and it makes the combat seem way tighter, and I love it. Another one I love and is an essential to tanking attacks is the Leaf Bracer ability, one of my favorites that carried over to future titles. This ability allows you to become invulnerable while you're healing. Leaf Bracer will absolutely carry you through some of the tougher fights if you're struggling. And the last one I want to mention is for the true sadists out there, the EXP Zero ability. This ability does exactly as advertised. It keeps you from ever gaining experience, and it serves two purposes, with the not so obvious being a glitch where if you do an attack with a finisher, every subsequent magic attack you do will do the same amount of damage as that finisher, leading to some really ridiculous levels of damage you can do. While the second, dev-intended purpose for this ability is to add an extra layer of challenge to the game, something that is already made hard by the fact that you can only get this ability in the new difficulty, Proud Mode.
I did a ton of research for this new difficulty to see if it was any different from Expert in the original. As far as I can tell, the only difference between the two is that you take more damage in your Gummi Ship. And that's it. That's not to say that it's not hard, I'm just curious why they didn't mess around with the numbers for damage output a little more.
For new players, they also added the beginner mode, which lets you start with a ton of items that'll make the game a cakewalk, and you do more and take less damage as well. But going back to those abilities, I love the inclusion of spicing Sora's moves up more. It seemed that by level 35 or 40 in the original that I had already seen all I was going to see when it came to Sora's attacks or mobility, so it was nice that they added so many new moves, whether they were support or attack abilities. I mean, I completely melted Riku's health in the Final Mix version, just because I was able to more easily manage him with the new abilities I was given access to. And I was definitely going to need all that new stuff for the inclusion of a brand new secret boss, Unknown. This was the start to a trend that I love seeing in Kingdom Hearts, putting a boss or final boss from an upcoming game as a boss in the game prior. It's quite possibly the best way you could tease the release of a future title without giving away too much, and Unknown is no pushover when it comes to the actual fight itself. The man's got force-filled giant electric orbs, lasers, lightsabers! This fight is frantic, fast, and other words that start with F.
Well, I can think of one word.
This fight is not easy in the slightest, and probably gave me the most trouble out of any of the other fights. I died about 4 or 5 times, and that's after the fact that I was probably a little overpowered when I was doing the fight, since it was one of the last things I did. He has this one stupid attack that would always catch me off guard where he locks your command menu and drains your HP slowly. While he's continuing to attack you, you have to find the release prompt on your command menu and select it before your HP drops to 0, which sounds easy enough, but they're moving so fast! Yes, every time, this is what killed me, nothing else. I can manage the fight just fine, but trying to get to the release prompt before my health hit 0 was too much for me. I ended up having to use Tinkerbell as a lifesaver just in case, but I never ended up needing her for the fight I won. Regardless of that attack, this is actually a pretty balanced fight that I always loved doing. I actually made a separate save file after that fight so that I could go back and fight him again. That's how much I love that fight.
But with the inclusion of a new boss, and new weapons, and new items, there's also the inclusion of a much needed overhaul to a pretty underdeveloped part of Kingdom Hearts.
That's right, the Gummi Ship got an upgrade. A little TLC, if you will. While the building and flying from world to world is practically 1-for-1, they decided to add in a little bit more incentive into playing around with the Gummi Ship more. After your first initial flight en route, you may choose to take that route again, but this time you'll get the opportunity to participate in a Gummi mission. These missions are usually pretty straightforward, like destroy this many blocks or get this many points, but some can be a bit more gimmicky, like flying through a route with only 2 blocks or something to that effect.
While the addition of these Gummi missions are nice for people who actually like doing the Gummi Ship stuff, the rewards are usually something like Gummi Ship decorations or blueprints.
That in turn means you're getting more Gummi Ship stuff for doing Gummi Ship stuff that isn't required in the slightest, which makes sense, but if you don't like the Gummi Ship stuff in the first place, not even the ship customization, this isn't going to change your mind.
So this is the one thing I barely even touched. I don't care for the Gummi Ship at all in this game, and a Gummi block that looks like a hand as a decoration did not change my mind and make me want to do more of it. Definitely glad it's here, but I can safely say, this wasn't for me.
In Final Mix, there was also the addition of a few new cutscenes that better fleshed out the
story.
But with those new cutscenes came the ability to skip them as well. I know, right? You couldn't skip cutscenes in the original Kingdom Hearts. Now, I would usually have applauded something like that to make sure people are actually following the story, but it kind of becomes an issue if you die in a boss fight and then you have to rewatch the entire cutscene about Riku being a bad boy and there's no way you're taking Kairi's heart before getting your second attempt at buff Riku.
So yeah, it's honestly a blessing in disguise that they finally added the ability to skip cutscenes, and now I praise games that let me do it, because surprisingly, not all games let you do it. Now, I wish that I could say that that was all the new changes to Kingdom Hearts Final Mix, but there are a few in here that are either broken, boring, or just completely unnecessary.
For starters, and I don't even know if anyone noticed this, Kingdom Hearts Final Mix has a 16:9 ratio, while the original was 4:3. However, in the original, the cutscenes were always 16:9 with black bars, so in Final Mix, they just zoomed in those 16:9 cutscenes to fit the entire screen, which is fine, except that led to some really weird cropping on some scenes that, at a glance, really isn't that important.
But it bothered me, damn it!
Now that's not enough for me to be like, oh, the original is better. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's more of just a comparison between the two. What's definitely a lot more noticeable to me is the timing of the camera on some of these cutscenes. There was really only ever one that caught my eye, but maybe there are others I just never saw.
Let me know if you ever saw any weirdness in the cutscenes like this, but yet again, this does not merit a dock in my feels about the Final Mix version. But what does is a very odd audio glitch I kept hearing that I have not seen a single person talk about.
Now, first and foremost, before I talk about this, I tested this multiple times. Different TVs, different speakers, different sound setups. I switched my game file to an SSD. I even looked up other people's playthroughs to see if it was happening, and it was, and I still haven't heard anyone talk about this. For some reason, when you're fighting mobs of enemies, the sound effects for certain enemies getting hit, spawning in, or dying just don't play at all. Here, I'll play an example on the PS2 first of how it should sound, and then I'll play a version on the Final Mix version.
Ha! Ha! Come on! Come on!
Do you hear that? The vanishing sound of the Heartless dying is being completely cut out. I didn't edit that out. Being an editor by trade, this drove me absolutely nuts. Audio cutting in and out constantly, and sometimes that audio cue can be very important.
There are certain instances in giant mob fights where I use audio to paint a sort of picture in my mind of where all the enemies are and how many there are left. And if I'm not given that cue, I'm completely caught off guard and it's super annoying.
I mean, this obviously didn't bother enough people for anyone to notice, but I absolutely did. Let me know if I'm just going crazy on this though. Seeing that no one said anything about it makes me think that I did something wrong, which very much could be the case. Anyways, that's really the only glitchy-like stuff I noticed in the Final Mix version, but something I'm sure you all noticed is the weird decision to recolor all of the enemies.
Yeah, I never got this one. I assume they did it as a look mom, more features kind of thing, but like, What a weird addition to the game. Literally every Heartless, including the bosses, got a different color scheme, and I'm gonna be honest, most of them are worse.
I'm sure this has something to do with the fact that I'm just used to the older colors, but this change just seems completely pointless. Speaking of pointless, do you like grinding? You don't? Well...
How about we crank required synthesis items to 11 and require you to grind for hours and hours on end just to get everything the Moogles have to offer?
Oh, no thanks. I think I'd rather keep looking for this needle in here. But you can go have fun without me.
This is not fun to me. The synthesis in the original game was perfectly balanced, as all things should be. By the time you get close to the end of the game, you're only missing a few items. You set aside an hour and boom, you've got all the necessary items. But here? Oh, no. You better set aside a whole day. For starters, there are a ton of new things for you to synthesize, which is pretty sweet, because a lot of these are super helpful and add another element to the customization of your build. But because there's so many items to synthesize, it makes it almost impossible to keep up with what you need and what you have. You can always see what's in your inventory, but in order to know what you need, you have to go all the way back to Traverse Town and talk to the Moogle, just to see if you have enough to make a stupid necklace. I ended up just writing down everything I needed for one item at a time and going and getting it and then coming straight back and repeating the process. But outside of that, I think there are two very glaring issues with this new system. First, most of the new items you need for synthesizing are tied behind new Heartless they added to the game. These new Heartless are a sort of minigame type of thing, where you have to attack the Heartless in a super specific way to get the items you need, which is pretty cool, and I actually like the innovation there. Take down as many Sniper Heartless before they see you. Hit the Mushroom Heartless as many times before it becomes unfrozen. You can only kill the ghost with potions, and so on and so on. The ideas for the fights are awesome, but getting the stupid items are not! These things have a spawn RNG, and similar to any other Heartless in the game, they have a drop rate RNG, meaning that even if you do good in the Heartless minigame, the stupid thing may not drop anything at all, which means you then have to reset the room by going back 2 rooms and then come all the way back and hope the thing even spawns. And if it doesn't, then you have to try to get it to spawn again. And then once you do get it to spawn, it might not even drop the item again. And then you have to do the whole thing all over again just so that you can get 3 items to get an accessory that you'll never use because you didn't know what the stats were till you made the damn thing. This becomes an even bigger problem when you have to do this in a place like Halloween Town and Deep Jungle that have these stupid traversal interaction pseudo doors instead of just normal doors.
And on top of all of that, there's still the other issue. By the time you have absolutely everything synthesized, you'll be at such a high level that it's not even going to matter.
I did go through the trouble of synthesizing everything just so that I could 1, say that I did it, and 2, tell you not to do it. So yeah, I don't really like synthesizing in this version of the game. It doesn't feel nearly as intuitive. In the first, it felt like the synthesizing mechanic was evolving with you, but in this one, it felt more like a checklist of stuff to do at the end of the game, similar to the journal.
But honestly, the synthesizing is really the only big thing I could say is worse in this game as opposed to the original. Kingdom Hearts 1.5 Final Mix is for sure the definitive way to play the game. I wouldn't think to recommend the original in a heartbeat. The Final Mix version just feels so much tighter and responsive. A lot of the quality of life improvements carried alone, but the addition of a new boss, better music, new cutscenes, more equipment, and better abilities is reason enough to play this version of Kingdom Hearts. But I strategically left out one crucial addition to this version of the game. You see, in both the original and this, you get these things called Ansem reports, and they added 3 more to Final Mix, which you can get through the super boss fights. But what are the Ansem reports? Well, they help us better learn and understand the... Whoa! Finally, story! Oh man, this is without a doubt my favorite part about the Kingdom Hearts franchise. I've studied almost every single detail about this franchise, so I hope you're happy to hear me gush about it as much as I am. I mean, I cannot overstate this enough. I know this game like the back of my hand.
Now, as much as I love to gush over this franchise, I'm super aware that it can get a little silly sometimes.
Huh?
The Heartless obey me now, Sora. Now I have nothing to fear.
You're stupid! Kyrie's inside me? Wait a second, are you Maleficent?
Whoa, hey! Are you Club?
But that silliness is what makes the super sad, serious, and well-told moments so much more impactful. Honestly, I think that's what makes Kingdom Hearts such a unique game compared to others. You have this wonderful blend of Square Enix's storytelling mixed surprisingly well with the worlds and characters of Disney, and I don't think the stories told in these games would work nearly as well if it wasn't for the Disney elements.
But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. The first Kingdom Hearts sets a precedent for what's to be expected out of this franchise, and I want to go through all of it with you so that we can better understand together what makes Kingdom Hearts so special. So, come with me as we dive into the heart with Sora and learn about the power of light, darkness, and friendship.
I've been having these weird thoughts lately. Like, is any of this for real? Or not?
Sora, a 14-year-old boy living on Destiny Islands, has been plagued with reoccurring thoughts that evolve into a nightmare full of dark creatures, Disney princesses, and Mickey Mouse?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you knew this, but that mysterious voice that's just text is actually Mickey Mouse. Because of a translation error, there are no "Hiya, pals" or anything to indicate that it's him, but it's him. Anyways, sorry, back to the story.
Sora is caught off guard by the massive darkside enemy and swallowed by darkness, and right at the deepest, darkest moment, Mickey reminds Sora that he will be the one who will open the door. Before figuring out what that means, Sora is startled awake by his good friend Kairi, a girl who mysteriously showed up on the islands one day without warning, and most of her memories gone. She's also accompanied by their good friend Riku, an older boy that shares a similar dream with Sora and Kairi, to see more than this tiny world has to offer, to venture out and see it all. These three have been friends for years, sharing a special bond. They'd play together, they'd watch the sunset together, they'd share their feelings with one another. They even worked together, going as far as to build a makeshift raft to attempt to see other worlds. A friendship like theirs is unmatched and hard to break, and it would seem that they would be together forever. It may even be possible that Sora shares even more intimate feelings for Kairi, expressing his want to share a Paopu fruit with her. It's said that, quote, if two people share a Paopu fruit, their destinies become intertwined. They'll remain a part of each other's lives, no matter what. In a cave on the island, Sora and Kairi as kids drew each other on the walls. Sora expresses his want to share the fruit with her by drawing a picture of him handing her one. And I think this is so cute.
This fruit has become a sort of symbol for the Kingdom Hearts series, a symbol of connection and see you again. It's never goodbye, it's see you soon. And this star-shaped fruit is a reminder of that, but it can also be taken in a much more literal sense, like dating or marrying someone, which I always found cute in the scene where Riku taunts Sora with it.
But all that laughing and having fun with friends can't last forever. In that cave, Sora finds a mysterious cloaked figure speaking of doors and different worlds, and unbeknownst to Sora, this was Ansem, and he was hatching a sinister plot that was actively unfolding across many of the worlds and plunging them into darkness. And unfortunately, Destiny Islands was soon to be another victim of the fallen worlds. Sora, in a desperate attempt to save their raft, rushes back to it, only to find Riku speaking nonsense, something about a door opening and not being afraid of the darkness. Sora attempted to reach out to his friend, but Riku vanished into the darkness without a trace. But Sora was guided out of that darkness via a mysterious key-shaped weapon that spawned in his hand, called the Keyblade. Wielding his new weapon, he goes to look for Kairi, who he finds in the cave from earlier in a zombie-like state. She flings towards Sora before disappearing in his arms and throwing Sora back and out into his falling apart world. Sora makes a final stand against a darkside enemy that appears on Destiny Islands, but it's all for nothing. Helpless to the destruction of Destiny Islands, Sora is flung into the deepest darkness as Destiny Islands continues to be destroyed in front of his very eyes. While all this is happening, we get a little bit more perspective at Disney Castle. King Mickey has left on an urgent mission. He's noticed that several stars are going out, indicating that worlds are falling, and he needs to get to the bottom of it. He asks Donald and Goofy, his royal magician and knight, to look for someone with a key in Traverse Town and stick with them. The sudden absence of the king only enhances the urgency in Donald and Goofy to find this key they were told to look for as they head to Traverse Town. The pacing of this in the game is done very smoothly and quite impressively. The different scenes we get with Sora, Kairi, and Riku Riku are interspliced between all the cutscenes we get with Donald and Goofy learning of the Keen's disappearance and their preparations for the journey they're about to go on. It sets the tone nicely and keeps everything flowing until eventually it all comes together. Sora, Donald, and Goofy all meet up with one another, but with different goals in mind. Sora wants to find his friends at all costs, but Donald and Goofy want to find their king. They decide to join forces and work together to meet their goals, with Donald being a little more unwilling to do anything outside of their original goals. It's through their meeting and the meeting of the many Final Fantasy characters that we get a little bit more insight into the Keyblade, the Heartless, and Ansem.
Quick pause here again for anyone who's played the entire Kingdom Hearts franchise and knows all of the story. Some of what I'm going to say is better explained in future titles, but for the sake of reviewing this as an isolated game, let's pretend that this is the only story that matters. We good? Cool. Back to the story.
The Keyblade chooses Sora to be its wielder to fight the Heartless, something that the Heartless greatly fear and try to track and attack Sora before he gets to them. But what are the Heartless? Beings of pure dark that come from the darkness in people's hearts. This is expounded on further in a report that was written by Ansem and then scattered across the many worlds, something Sora, Donald, and Goofy will have to find if they want a better explanation of who Ansem is and why there are Heartless in the worlds. Worlds that used to not be connected, but thanks to the meddling of the Heartless, those barriers that kept the world apart have been shattered, and now every world is traversable.
Yet again, a lot of what I said is either changed or given more details in future installments, such as Ansem's report, but I definitely think it's still worth talking about them here, but just in a bit. Let's talk about our trio and their journey first.
I think this is a perfect time to mention how well I think Sora, Donald, and Goofy work with each other, and how I think that Donald and Goofy were the perfect choice for partners in this game. The chaotic, hateful energy of Donald plays well with a compassionate, simple-minded Goofy, and Sora's extrovertedness and strong heart blends perfectly with these two goofballs. I love watching their friendship grow slowly as they journey from world to world, learning what makes the other tick or making each other laugh. They have moments where they fight and grow, moments where they are fearful and someone calms them, moments where they are saddened by a character's decisions or actions.
They did a phenomenal job at implementing Donald and Goofy into this game, and I'm so glad that they chose them because I don't know if this would work with any other characters.
Along their journey, looking for their friends, Sora learns of there being keyholes in each of the worlds. This is the sort of doorway to the world's heart, and the Heartless are on a desperate hunt to find these keyholes. If the keyhole is left uncontested, more and more Heartless will eventually find it and attack the world's heart, engulfing it in darkness and destroying it in the process. Learning this, Sora seeks out these keyholes to seal them with the Keyblade, and thus preventing the worlds from falling to darkness. This is a fantastic way to implement the different Disney worlds and give a story incentive other than a wild goose chase to travel to different worlds. But that's not to say that the Disney worlds just serve as a sort of checklist, because they hold a much greater purpose than that. Each story being told at these worlds serves as a way for Sora to grow as a person. At each locale, Sora learns a valuable lesson, whether it's to find his light in a bleak darkness, to listen to the people that matter most, trust your friends, put others first. A lot of people think of these Disney worlds as side content to the greater picture, but you're too zoomed in. Take a step back and see the story that's unfolding in front of you. These games would not work without Disney. And speaking of Disney, something sinister is happening in the shadows while Sora is world hopping. The mistress of all evil, Maleficent, is also causing trouble worldwide as a sort of secondary antagonist. Maleficent has gained control over the Heartless and seeks an unlimited power source known as Kingdom Hearts. She learns of this via Ansem's reports, which she got a hold of first. In their readings, it explains that with 7 princesses of heart gathered into one place, it may be possible to open the final keyhole to Kingdom Hearts. Wanting that power source, she amasses an army of Heartless and gathered together multiple Disney villains such as Jafar, Hades, Ursula, Oogie Boogie, and Captain Hook, promising control of the Heartless and complete rule over their respective worlds. This desire for the princesses left many worlds in ruin as they searched high and low for them, and at this point in the story, they only need 3 more. But she's not done being a naughty little witch. When Sora and Riku got separated, Riku just so happened to end up in Hollow Bastion where Maleficent was stationed. Sensing darkness in Riku's heart, she decided to use that to her advantage and manipulate Riku into not only helping her, but convincing him that Sora was against him, and that Sora betrayed him and Kairi for Donald and Goofy.
I love Maleficent's inclusion in this game. She plays such a phenomenal villain to the game and also plays extremely well to her character from Sleeping Beauty. She's an evil schemer who does nothing but manipulate and plant seeds of doubt and or power in everyone's mind. She is a perfect fit for this game, and her inclusion was an amazing choice.
Throughout your adventure, you come across this more cold-hearted Riku several times, and the first time he acts that way to you, it's kind of a gut punch. Riku is supposed to be your best friend. Why is he acting so antagonistic towards you? This all comes to a head when you finally confront him at Hollow Bastion. In a shock to everyone, Riku is able to wield Sora's Keyblade and steal it from him. As it turns out, Riku was the intended Keyblade wielder, and showing that his heart is strong enough, is able to take the blade away from Sora. To add insult to injury, Donald and Goofy were under direct orders from the king to follow the person with the key, and so, against their better judgment, abandon us. This stings so much. The two people you've been with this entire game, you've been through thick and thin with them. You thought that they would have your back no matter what. It turns out that they were just following orders. Or so it may seem. In a desperate attempt to see this through to the end, Sora chases after Riku with nothing but a wooden sword. Riku mocks Sora's attempt and tries to attack him head on, and just before Sora receives a serious blow, Goofy steps in and blocks the attack, followed by Donald, who stands by Sora's side regardless of their king's order. They may be going against their king, but they would never betray Sora either. Sora now sees that the connections to everyone he has met along the way has only strengthened his bonds and his heart. With a strong heart, he's way more worthy of the Keyblade than Riku would ever be. His friends are his power.
And like, listen, I get it. Oh, my friends are my power, what a cliche. But like, no. How important of a lesson is that? I personally don't know where I would be if it wasn't for my friends and family. This moment is a fantastic moment for Sora. He's growing to understand and appreciate all of the people he's met along the way. Each of them have left an impact on Sora and his heart. Whether that something was small or big, it doesn't matter. If it wasn't for them, he wouldn't be the person he is at this very moment. And the same would apply to me and the people I surround myself with in my daily life. My friends are my power. And I love them very much.
But Riku just isn't having it. How could the Keyblade choose Sora? The countless amounts of manipulation and doubt planted inside of him has only made his darkness flourish out further. Ansem, sensing this, lends Riku the unlocking of his full potential, the power of darkness. And Riku, wanting more power, allows Ansem to, unbeknownst to Riku, possess his body and take full control over him. Riku has been fully engulfed in darkness. Sora fights his way further through Hollow Bastion, taking down Maleficent in the process and coming across Riku looming over a comatose Kairi and wielding an incomplete Keyblade of People's Heart, a Keyblade that manifested from the gathering of 6 Princesses of Heart's heart. This Keyblade has the power to forcefully remove one's heart from their body, but it's also used to unlock the final keyhole to Kingdom Hearts. Riku, now introducing himself as Ansem, Seeker of Darkness, confesses that the final keyhole cannot be complete because the last Princess of Heart, which just so happens to be Kairi, is missing her heart, which also just so happens to be sleeping within Sora. I love this reveal. It is hinted at so well throughout the game. There are several moments that just seemed so out of place, like Sora saying that this castle he sees in Deep Jungle looks familiar. That was Kairi's heart reacting to the castle, since it reminded her of her hometown, which is later revealed to be Hollow Bastion through visions of the past. And then there's the obvious one where they literally show Kairi's body phasing through Sora when Destiny Islands is falling. You may think that that's an artistic choice, but it's really a clever hint to this one reveal. This reveal is so well executed and well put together, and it all culminates to this amazing fight with Riku. After besting Riku, Sora attempts to seal the keyhole, but it's incomplete since Kairi's heart is trapped within Sora. Sora, seeing no other option, looks back at his friends, smiles, and then plunges the Keyblade of People's Hearts into his chest. This noble cause was an attempt to wake all the Princesses of Heart, including Kairi, and he achieved that goal, but not without a price. His sacrifice causes his body to start deteriorating, and Sora starts falling backwards. Kairi, Donald, and Goofy all lunge towards Sora's body to catch it, but not before Sora disappears before their eyes in a burst of light, causing all of them to cry out in sadness as their longtime friend and companion fades away.
What's happening to me? Falling into darkness.
With her friend gone, Ansem shows up, now sporting an appearance that looks more similar to how he used to look. With the keyhole complete, Kairi serves no more purpose for Ansem, and he makes an attempt to attack her, but not before a corporeal Riku comes in to hold back Ansem. Riku has managed to gain a little control over his body, but just enough for them to escape as Heartless come flooding into Hollow Bastion. But curiously enough, you're now in control of one of these Heartless. You absent-mindedly make your way to the front gate of Hollow Bastion where you corner Kairi, Donald, and Goofy. This curious Heartless puzzles the group, but Kairi senses that this Heartless may be Sora. And right as she's being attacked by other Heartless, she grabs a hold of the curious Heartless and unknowingly uses her power as a Princess of Heart to turn this Heartless back to human, back to Sora.
Kairi, thank you. Sora!
This whole sequence is one of my favorite moments in Kingdom Hearts. Kairi's heart reveal, Sora's sacrifice, playing as a Heartless, Kairi saving Sora.
It's all so very special to me. I love it. But it's sad in a way. Sora and Kairi are finally back together, but now they've lost another friend. Sora and Riku so badly wanted Kairi back, but they went in completely different directions, leading to a much more somber outcome for Riku. He'd been led astray this entire time, and now he's stuck in complete darkness.
Quite literally, too. In one of the extra scenes in Final Mix, we get a better explanation as to what's happening with Riku here. His heart was strong enough to fight off the darkness, but not his body, which led him to being stuck in a place of darkness where hearts are gathered. The realm of darkness. There he hears the voice of Mickey that guides him to help with something he is calling the door to darkness. While Riku is making his way there, Sora and Kairi are finally catching up with each other. After all this time, all this fighting and sadness and strife, Sora and Kairi are finally reunited. However, the reunion is a little bittersweet as they lament the absence of their friend Riku. But Sora knows that he's not gone, and Kairi is proof of that, since she was the light in his darkness when he turned into a Heartless, and now he'll do the same for Riku. He will bring his friend back no matter the cost. Kairi wants to help, she doesn't want to lose Sora again, but fearing for her safety, Sora asks her to stay, stating that they'll never be separated again, now sharing a special bond. Kairi emphasizes his statement further by agreeing and giving him a special lucky charm, asking him to promise to bring it back.
Take this. It's my lucky charm. Be sure to bring it back to me.
Don't worry, I will.
This moment is so special to the development of Sora and Kairi's relationship. Not only does it better emphasize the cutscenes and moments they had before the destruction of Destiny Islands, but it's even further highlighted by the lucky charm being based on the Paopu fruit we talked about earlier. Sora and Kairi's connections are now intertwined.
Don't ever forget, wherever you go, I'm always with you.
With Kairi saved, Sora only has one more objective to complete, to save Riku via defeating Ansem and saving all of the worlds from destruction. Easy! But before Sora heads to the final confrontation, let's take a deeper look into Ansem to get a better understanding of his past and motives. Throughout both versions of the game, you'll receive a grand total of 13 Ansem reports that'll go into deeper detail of who Ansem was and what caused him to turn into what he is in this game.
Last warning, because I know someone will say, that's not right, they changed that, or they added more details to it. I'm aware, but I'm reviewing this game, not the entire series story as a whole, alright? Alright, back to the reports.
Ansem was the ruler of Hollow Bastion and a researcher. He loved delving into science and discovering the heart of man to an unhealthy degree. This fascination with the heart led to him discovering that even the purest of hearts can have just the smallest amount of darkness in it. Discovering this manifestation of darkness, he decided to perform multiple experiments on it, including amplifying it, suppressing it, extracting it, and cultivating it. These experiments are what led to the creation of the Heartless. He witnessed a test subject's heart collapse and turn into one of these creatures. Upon further studies, he noticed that they reacted to live subjects, robbing them of their hearts and multiplying at an alarming rate. But despite the severity of his actions, his experiments continued. He wanted to learn all he could about the Heartless and managed to have them recreated artificially, a perfect copy so that he could further his research. He marked these ones with an emblem and dubbed them Emblem Heartless, while the others were dubbed Pureblood Heartless. His studies of the heart, darkness, and the Heartless finally paid off when a wandering Heartless started to move erratically and ran in a very odd direction. He followed it, and after a while, it led him to a mysterious door that appeared in front of him. His curiosity got the better of him, and he opened this door. Behind it was something he couldn't possibly imagine or describe. It was exuding a sort of energy that he had never felt before, and the Heartless was drawn to it. That night, he would experience a meteor shower. This meteor shower was actually the walls protecting the worlds shattering, thus connecting all of the worlds. What Ansem had just opened was the heart to his world. At first, he was unaware of this, but after doing a ton of research, he had come to the conclusion that every world has its own heart, similar to people. But before he delved further on that, he was visited by a guest from Another world? Something that once seemed impossible but is now reality due to a ship being created from the broken fragments from the world's borders. His guest just so happened to be Mickey Mouse, and dubbed the ship the Gummi Ship. Mickey also shedded light on the Keyblade as well, explaining its power to open doors and hold phenomenal power. Hearing of such power, Ansem was worried that the key bearer would find the heart to his world and seal it off, preventing his research. In an effort to stop this, he tested a hypothesis that the Princess of Heart and the Keyblade would resonate. He selected a girl who he was taking a gamble on whether she was a Princess of Heart or not, and cast her out of the world in an effort to find the key bearer. This girl was none other than Kairi, explaining how she got from Hollow Bastion to Destiny Islands, since Sora was indeed the key bearer. Hungry for even more knowledge, Ansem decided to test another hypothesis. If there is such a thing as a heart to a world, where would those hearts go if they were destroyed by the Heartless? If all of the darkness that resides inside of a person's heart would also reside inside of a world's heart, and then that world were to be destroyed by the Heartless, then it too should return to the realm of darkness, a place where darkness spawns and congregates. The world of the Heartless, the heart of all worlds. Kingdom Hearts. Something that magnificent would hold an immense amount of knowledge about how hearts work, and he shall have it to himself. But without a means of transporting himself from world to world, he casts aside his body and plunges into the depths of darkness to find the Keyblade. And that's why he goes from looking like this to this in the game.
Okay, whew. First of all, that was a lot. But I like how overly detailed this is and paints a very clear picture of how Ansem got to where he is, both mentally and physically in the game. He doesn't really show up throughout the game until the very end, but I think that on a second playthrough, this makes sense, especially if you read the reports. He's always kind of been the one pulling the strings from the very beginning. If it wasn't for his report, Maleficent would have never gathered the princesses. It was never really her intention to help him out, but this whole time she was playing right into his hands. Now, I'm going to be perfectly honest with all of you, it was pretty difficult for me to write that description for Ansem because a lot of it has been altered in multiple different spots in future entries. But like I said, let's take it as it is. You thought Maleficent was the one pulling the strings, but the real manipulator was Ansem the whole time.
And it's finally time for Sora to bring down Billy Zane himself. Finally catching up to him in the end of the world, Sora and Ansem argue over the origins of one's heart. While Ansem argues that all hearts are to be eventually consumed by darkness, thus making it the heart's true essence, Sora knows better. He has experienced it firsthand and knows that deep down, there is a light that will never go out. Reaching an impasse, the two battle to the death before Ansem drags Sora down to the realm between, putting their battle right in front of the very thing that Mickey has been looking for and talking about since the beginning of the game. The door to darkness, an entryway into the realm of darkness, and a door with a powerful connection to the heart of all worlds looming behind the door. Kingdom Hearts. Sora, Donald, and Goofy make one final stand against the Seeker of Darkness himself, putting every ounce of energy into braining down the Destroyer of Worlds for good. And as Ansem is starting to fade away from the battle, he makes one final attempt to connect with Kingdom Hearts, to fill him with the power of darkness. Supreme darkness. But Ansem was wrong. After all the research he did, all the experimenting on live subjects, casting Kairi out of Hollow Bastion, destroying so many worlds, it would seem that Ansem didn't learn a thing.
You're wrong. I know now, without a doubt, Kingdom Hearts is light!
In his struggle for power, Ansem's hubris led to him being destroyed by the very thing he feared more than anything.
But why?
But it's not over yet. Sora needs to close the door to darkness before more Heartless seep out of it. But it's hopeless. Unbeknownst to him, you need 2 Keyblades to shut the door, with each one on either side to shut it. And right before all hope is lost, who's to show up but none other than King Mickey and Riku, who not only got his body back after Ansem's defeat, but was able to meet up with Mickey just in time on the Realm of Darkness side of the door. King Mickey had found the other Keyblade in the Realm of Darkness, and with everyone's help, they all shut the door of darkness, preventing calamity from falling upon the worlds. But with Riku and Mickey on the other side of the door when it's being sealed, Sora and Riku, along with Donald, Goofy, and Mickey, are all being separated again. With no other choice, Riku gives Sora some final parting words. Take care of her. And as he says that, the door shuts, and his friend, the friend he spent so much time with growing up, the friend he shared so many memories with, is gone again, lost in the realm of darkness. But a glimmer of hope. With the door shut and Ansem defeated, the worlds that were destroyed start to reshape and form back to their former glory. At that moment, Sora spots Kairi, who is being sent back to Destiny Islands as it's being restored. Sora's job isn't done yet. He has to look for Riku and Mickey. He says his goodbyes to Kairi and promises that he'll come back for her before the two of them are separated yet again. Kairi makes it back to Destiny Islands and watches as the world is restored to how it was before she left. She witnesses the sky returning to how it used to be, with every fallen world being brought back to the realm of light. Feeling nostalgic, she explores the islands before reaching the cave drawing her and Sora drew when they were kids. Tears in her eyes, she notices that Sora has added an addition to the drawing of him giving her a Paopu fruit. Without hesitation, Kairi completes the drawing, sharing Sora's feelings towards her with him. Sora and Kairi's destinies are forever intertwined.
This story is so beautiful. Everything about it, every step of the way. I love this story. It's an amazing story about cherishing your friends and making new ones and sharing that love in your heart. Everything about this is so special to me and told in such a way that really gets to me. The emotional parts hit hard, the feelings the characters have, I share. I laugh, I cry, and sometimes I deep dive into the lore. I loved learning about Ansem and his origins and how the mechanics of each of the worlds work. The mythos of the heart and the Keyblade and Heartless. It's also fascinating to me. I know that it only gets crazier from here, but I'm strapped in and ready. I know I've played all these games before, but merely explaining the story of the first game alone has made me so unbelievably excited to play the future installments and dissect those even further. So I hope you've been enjoying this as much as I have, because I want to keep going with this series. But we're not quite done with the story just yet. They've got to tease the sequel, right?
Sora, Donald, and Goofy are now trapped on an endless road searching for Riku and Mickey, but coming up empty-handed. Before the door was shut, Mickey let them know that there was a door to the light. The trio understood this as being a clue to a way home. They have no idea where to look. Before they could come up with a solid plan, they notice that Pluto, Mickey's dog, is right in front of them, carrying a letter from the king himself. Unsure of how Pluto got there, they chase after him to catch the letter in hopes of getting a clue of what to do next. The camera pans out as we are left to speculate what's in store for our heroes in their next journey. Remember, Sora, you are the one who will open the door to the light. In addition to that final scene, we're actually treated to a couple more scenes if you play it on the final mix version, something that I've always been fond of that they do for these games. If you meet the requirements, which usually has something to do with the difficulty you played on and how much of Jiminy's journal you completed, you'll be given a look at what's to come. The secret cutscene, titled Another Side, Another Story, shows a figure dressed in a black cloak fighting Heartless, while someone who seems to be Riku is looking on. And that black cloaked figure seems to be wielding 2 Keyblades? That's so sick! I want 2 Keyblades! The figure asks about the whereabouts of Sora before an onslaught of different messages appear on the screen, followed by a shot of Kairi watching a shooting star. Another Side, Another Story Deep Dive, the secret cutscene presented in the final mix version, expounds on the first secret ending further, showing the fight between the figure and the Heartless, and then soon after, a fight between the figure and Riku in much more detail, but also interspersed between a bunch of text on screen teasing a sequel before being shown a shot of Mickey, and wrapping it all up with a conversation between another cloaked individual, claiming they've met Sora, and he looks a lot like you.
Gives me chills. But I think what's really cool about these scenes is that if you've played the future titles, these scenes actually do play out in the sequels, something that I always appreciated since it felt like Nomura had a plan for the entire story from the very beginning, which in reality, he had a vague idea. He threw in these scenes to kind of gauge the demand for a sequel. Nomura has stated in several interviews that he makes things up as he goes, and I honestly like this. It allows for the story and its characters to stretch its legs a bit and grow, but it's nice to see that he's always thinking just a little bit ahead.
But with that, we've talked about absolutely everything this story and game have to offer. I think that the first Kingdom Hearts as a whole is a phenomenal game. The platforming is a bit rough and the gameplay is a lot more clunkier and slower than future titles, but it still holds up surprisingly well after all these years. If you do end up liking this game, you're going to find that future installments are vastly different from this one, as we'll find out in the future. I've grown to appreciate the future installments Hearts a lot more, but something that I can definitely see in this game that I do wish was in future installments is the amount of exploration that this game invokes. There are so many different puzzles in the physical environments and interactables that future installments just don't do. There are simple things like puzzles in rooms that get you a potion or things that upgrade your Gummi Ship, but there's so much of it in every world and it doesn't go unappreciated. I do wish that the level designs were consistently good. It feels like a lot of them, or at least some of them, are pretty wonky to get around, specifically Deep Jungle and Halloween Town with a little bit of Atlantica. But outside of those grievances with the level design, the worlds and environments are fun to explore and the characters you meet along the way are a joy to interact with. Not to mention the top-notch story this game presents, hitting you left and right with lore, world building, sadness, excitement, fear, everything. I love this game to death, and while it's definitely not my favorite in the Kingdom Hearts series, it will always be one of the best in my opinion. Kingdom Hearts is a milestone in gaming and deserves to be held as one of the greatest triumphs in gaming history. If it wasn't for this game and the series it spawned, I don't think I would be the person I am today. Thank you, Kingdom Hearts, and thank you, Nomura, for making one of my favorite video game franchises of all time.
And that is my entire explanation and review of the first Kingdom Hearts game.
Uh-huh. And who's Mickey Mouse?
Son of a bitch!
But where does this game sit on my ranking? Let's give the wheel a big ol' spin and find out.
The first Kingdom Hearts game is ranked number 10 in the S tier. Now, let's get something clear before the pitchforks come out. This isn't where I'm putting it in my Kingdom Hearts ranking. Not at all. No need to do that one yet since we've only talked about this game. No, this is my overall ranking, and the competition is pretty high. But here, take a look. See? I love this game to death, and I actually convinced myself to move it higher as I was working on the script. But it has a few issues and clunkiness in it that I just can't ignore. But clearly, not enough for me to put it any lower. Kingdom Hearts was a ton of fun to play, and even more fun to pick apart, and I hope you all enjoyed listening to me blather on about it for, honestly, probably a little too long. If this does well enough, you can be expecting a video in the works for the game that follows after this, Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories. So please let me know how I did in the comments down below, and don't forget to subscribe and like if you think I did a good enough job. I struggled with this one after everyone liked the Guitar Hero video so much, so I was a bit worried I wouldn't be able to live up to it, so please, please, please let me know what you thought. I promise I read every comment, whether positive or negative. And if you want to spread some of that love or hate even further, you can do it in my socials or Discord, which you can find a link to down below. Honestly, I may have to make a Kingdom Hearts channel on my Discord and nerd it up with a bunch of people after this. But you can also nerd it up with me on my Twitch as well, where I try my very best to stream at least once a week. But you can see my ever-changing schedule on my socials. Speaking of ever-changing, you can also get a glimpse of my ranking, which I'm updating constantly, which can also be found in the link down below. And last but not least, if you think I did a good enough job and you want to help support the channel with even crazier bits and better equipment, you can become a member, either on YouTube or Twitch, where you can get exclusive early access to information about the development of my videos, access to members-only Discord channels, emojis, and badges, and if you really want to help support the channel, you can bump up your membership to get a personalized shout-out or even a custom-made drawing of you or your avatar to look like mine at the end of a future video. Now, I've said it before, and I'll say it again, it's not required, but it helps immensely with the creation of these videos. These videos are straining enough as is on me mentally. The last thing I want to do is try to figure out how I'm gonna afford a one-to-one full-size life replica of Mickey just to destroy it for a joke. Forget I said that. Either way, I think it's time to set this game aside. I hope you all enjoyed the video. I hope to see you next time, and I hope you continue to have a chill day.